We're live. What's going on? Hello, hello to everybody just joining. We're on time today. Isn't that nice? Welcome to the stream. It's going to be a good stream. We got a lot of news to cover. A lot of things have developed really from Donald Trump in the last 24 to 48 hours. He's been going ballistic on Truth Social. So we're going to look at everything that's been happening. Welcome to the stream. Nice to have all of you here. My brother will not be going live tonight, so I'll be the substitute teacher. Hopefully the cool substitute teacher that people like for the next 2 or 3 hours. We'll go live. It'll be a little bit of a quicker stream because, like I said, there's really some important developments, but not that important. There aren't too many, but right now it's kind of just some moves that have been taken for what I determine to be future realities that I'll get into. A lot of it will be speculative, but a lot of news. I got a couple articles here that I think are very important. And then, of course, Trump's meltdown on Truth Social. He's going crazy in regards to these NATO countries not helping him, calling them paper tigers, his reaction to the Strait of Hormuz. And now Trump is suggesting, this is his words, by the way, that we're nearing the end of this conflict. To read it exactly, he says, "We are getting very close to meeting our objectives as we consider winding down our great military efforts in the Middle East." So really confusing, conflicting narratives, because he's saying that, but then yesterday we just deployed, or actually I believe it was earlier today, this morning or around noon, we deployed another Marine expeditionary unit of about 2,200 Marines and 3 warships that are currently on their way to the Middle East. We sent the first one rather, about a week and a half ago. Now we've sent our second one. So things are just plummeting down the drain. Not really sure as to why. Trump has made the conclusion or tried to fool the masses that this war is almost over or that we're nearing the end if he's sending all of these reinforcements, which, by the way, have no clear objective as of now. And I think I know why, and I'll get to my prediction on that or my speculation. But we'll get into all of it. There's been a lot of crazy things that have been happening just from last night to now. I was live last night. We were covering, and I was a little bit behind in the news because I hadn't gone live earlier in the week, but we were covering Joe Kent and Tulsi Gabbard and the whole situation with them, and Tulsi Gabbard and her fight with Congressman John Ossoff, I believe his last name is, in which he grilled her and, of course, made her struggle with an aggressive line of questioning that was brutal yet very necessary in aims to figure out why we're at war with Iran, why we have this conflict with this country in the Middle East. And she had no answers for him. Of course, same thing, just like Marco Rubio, same thing like Pete Hegseth, same thing like Donald Trump. And now Tulsi Gabbard, the entire administration has been fumbling, trying to collect themselves as to an explanation for why we're at war. Every single one of them giving different reasons and every single one of them giving different motivations. Of course, we have the famous statement by Marco Rubio that I played several times yesterday on stream just so I can get the message across that we struck because he said, in quotes, Israel was going to strike first, and we knew that would cause a retaliatory strike on U.S. bases in the region. And then you've got Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump saying they got nuclear capabilities, and that's why. But then at the same time, in June, we allegedly nullified these nuclear capabilities, or in Trump's word, obliterated them. And so now we're still aiming to fulfill that criteria, which is we need to nullify their nuclear capability and whatever have you. And it's a mess. It's a shit show. The entire administration is running around trying to find some sort of one-size-fits-all answer, but unfortunately they've been receiving a versatile line of questioning from the press and everybody else who's been critical of this war. And, it's not that easy to defend a lie when something is so blatantly a lie, when something is so blatantly wrong. You can only come up with so many explanations before you start to make a fool of yourself, in which this administration has excellently done in these last 3.5 weeks that we've been at war. We've just reached the 3.5 week mark. And actually, no, we're almost at 4 weeks. I apologize. It's about to be 4 weeks from tomorrow. So that's where we are. And it's funny because the Trump administration had promised that this war would be, a few days, or at least there were some unconfirmed sources out of the White House or press that, reports were predicting this war would be maybe 4 days, give or take. And then it went up to like a week. And then it went up to 4 weeks. And now we're at 4 to 6 weeks. So, and here's the thing, and I'll get more into this later. I don't want to cover it now because I want to go over this article and do everything in order today, but you got to pay attention to the timeline here. Donald Trump had stated, and he boasted and bragged, that this war would not be long. It's not going to be a forever war. Same thing with Pete Hegseth, who was the Secretary of War, in his Pentagon briefings. They're saying this isn't going to be long. It's going to be quick. We're going to be in and out. It's going to be expensive. Wars cost money. Pete Hegseth had said that yesterday, I believe, that being March 19th. In his Pentagon briefing, and so we'll go over that in a moment, but they were claiming that this was kind of going to be in and out. They're aware of the dangers of the Iraq war, but it's important not to overcorrect our mistake in the Iraq war, and so if we need Middle Eastern intervention, we shall do so, in which I agree. If the United States needs to intervene for any reason in the world, then we should do that. I don't have a problem with that, but this is not an intervention that has any sort of justification behind it, besides Israel's security, of course. And I think in their very aggressive and constrained timeline of this war, it hasn't been lapsing the way they had anticipated. And so now we're kind of sending Marine expeditionary units, about 2,200 today, as well as these warships, to potentially speed up the process. So I don't know if this is an attempt at brinksmanship, or I don't know if these Marines actually have a legitimate task that has not been specified or released to the public just yet. My prediction is, unfortunately, I think this will materialize into boots on ground. I think there will be ground invasions, specifically in Karg Island, or wherever these nuclear assets, if you will, are located in Iran, which can be anywhere, but they're hundreds of feet underground. And this is what U.S. intelligence had told Donald Trump prior to this conflict is, hey, if you get into a war with Iran, it's going to be really hard to actually effectuate a regime change without putting boots in the ground, because they have several of these underground cities where they build their missiles, where they enrich their uranium, for you to try and nullify or destroy those capabilities with an exclusive air campaign is very unlikely. And Donald Trump obviously took this information, went through one ear and out the other. Obviously, the guy is 90 years old, damn near, and so he's losing his mind, I think. I think he's starting to get to that age where the cognitive decline has become very obvious. Before, he was able to patch it up and it didn't seem so bad, but now it's gotten to the point where he's genuinely contradicting himself inside of sentences. He said something ridiculous today. He said, well, we're not doing boots on ground in Iran, but if we were, I wouldn't tell you. It's like, but you just told her. Like, what? You just told her. What are you saying? So Trump has turned into like this crazy old man who's running a country, and he's, of course, an egomaniac, and this war has been an attempt to stroke his ego, but really it's effectively made him look really stupid. It's outed him to be the lazy politician that he honestly always has been. He's a politician of campaigns, but he's not a politician of action. And many of them are, have at it. I understand there's many politicians we can list for days that always make bold claims and promises, but when they're actually in office, when they actually gain political hegemony or power, then those said claims are nowhere to be found. They vanish effectively. And I get it. That's politics. Politics is telling people what they want to hear. Politics is kind of playing the part, looking the part, but it gets to a point where those failed promises really turn into betrayal. As Tucker Carlson said, it's heartbreaking. And I agree, it has been heartbreaking in the fact that the United States is now starting not a conflict, but a full-fledged war that honestly has kind of transpired into what feels like maybe World War III. And people may say, well, that's extreme. You're being dramatic. And it's like, well, what else is it? Because this is a conflict that is not going to end in a couple days. It's not going to end in a few weeks. And how do I know? It's because the Trump administration had said it would end in a few weeks, and we're at the tail end of the third week, entering the fourth, and we've done nothing effectively. Of course, you got Pete Hegseth with his bold claims that we have destroyed missile carriers and their launching platforms, and we damaged tons of military infrastructure, and we cut the head off the snake, and we killed all of their military leadership. Trump said the other day, I saw it on a report in Reuters, as well as a video, that they've got no one left to even negotiate with or talk to. That's how many leaders they have killed. Of course, he's being a little bit bombastic or, funny in his statement, right? He's being a little bit more loose around the edges. I don't think that's legitimate, but the point still stands that despite all of our military efforts and us bombing Iran and bombing Tehran and other provinces and their nuclear capabilities or their nuclear sites and some missile carrier launches, they're still destroying a good deal of critical or key assets in the Middle East, military bases, oil refineries in Saudi Arabia. They've been attacking Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Nobody saw that coming. They just attacked Kuwait a few hours ago. Baghdad is getting hit. The proxy groups in the north, in Iraq, have been targeting U.S. assets as well. And so, or embassies even, have now been subject to violent crime and or violent missile barrages. And so you start to, or not violent missile barrages, but rather violent protests. I'm sorry, I misspoke. And so it starts to get to a point where the lazy person, right, at least intellectually, looks at this war and goes, this seems like, yeah, we may win, but at what cost? And that, my friends, is what you call asymmetric warfare. And Iran has been, unfortunately, excellent in dealing asymmetric warfare to the United States. And as that, we've seen this culmination trickle down into the Trump administration trying to explain themselves in these hearings to the media on Truth Social as to how this war is going exactly how we planned. But it seems like every single week we just compromise more and more, and Trump pulls back more and more on his promises that we wouldn't effectuate any boots on ground. I'll tell you this, Karg Island is a critical piece of infrastructure, or a critical piece geopolitically or geostrategically for Iran, for them to export their oil and for them to refine their oil and for their military weapons. And we're going to have to do something to that island if we want to see a slowdown or a pullback in terms of their advancement on the region. And the reason why I'm almost positive that means a ground invasion is because that island has been fortified in the sense of no air superiority could actually pose a threat to it. In the 1980s, Saddam Hussein tried the same thing, and not only did he fail miserably, by the way, the U.S. had backed him in this invasion, not only did he fail miserably, and the U.S. had planted him into leadership anyways, but he failed, and he also gave Iran the drop that this would likely happen again. And this is the kind of never-ending issue that I'm always explaining, is that Iran has always had this opportunity to kind of get a little bit of a head start as opposed to their neighbors in the region, and understand that an American attack is a matter of if, not when. And of course, that when took place, or that if really took place 3 weeks ago, or 3.5 weeks ago on February 28th, when we launched joint strikes with Israel. And it was nothing. It was not even close to a surprise for the Iranians or the regime. And some may say, well, oh, we killed Khomeini, we killed Ayatollah, and we killed all of his commanders, and we killed everybody else under him. And yeah, we did, and that's good, I suppose. But it seems as if, though, their military and their offensive applications can operate autonomously or independently of said leadership. And so it really has rendered useless for us, besides bragging rights, which, if Trump is serious about pulling out in his Truth Social post where he's saying we're going to pull back on our advancement and we're going to let loose a little bit on the missile barrages, well, then Iran has won the war symbolically. I tweeted this, actually. I'll read the tweet very briefly. And I'm going to read chats in a moment, guys. Give me one moment. But I had tweeted this. So now I'll read the Truth Social post in a moment, because we're going to get into that. But, you know, here's the... Oh. Okay, sorry. Bro. Audio issues run in the family. I'll read it again. Easy does it. Okay? Sorry. All right. I'll repeat myself. Sorry. I know, we're back. Okay? Have some grace. I do this like every show, bro. I literally am conscious. I'm like, all right, remember to unmute everything on OBS. and I have it here and I just forget. Like I get into the zone and I'm monologuing and I'm talking and I'm breaking the news down. And then you start to get into the flow and then you're like, oh, damn, I forgot I have to run a stream here. Okay. Should be able to hear me now. Okay. Not muted. Okay. So I tweeted, and this is in response to Trump saying we're almost done or that we're going to conclude our military matters here in the Middle East or in Iran. I say, if he is considering stopping, Iran won. We did little to nothing to their missiles program or nuclear program. We wasted money, killed civilians, and the IRGC still stands strong with its new leader charged up about his father's death. What's more, he did not accomplish regime change, which is why Israel is hell-bent in the first place. Of course, we're in this war, not because of the nuclear capabilities, but really because of regime change. Because if it was about the nukes, well then, that was all said and done with in June via Operation Midnight Hammer, whereby Trump's claim we obliterated their nuclear capabilities. So I'm not sure why they're still using that same reasoning when, from their reports, and these are conservative, we set their nuclear enrichment program back by several years. I continue on. This is great news if he is serious. I'm doubtful about that, of course. But the United States has just lost all their moral high ground. And we look foolish on the international stage if he is legitimate. And to add to that, Iran has generational bragging rights. Could you imagine? And look, it's beneficial if we pull out of this war because it's not beneficial for us. Right? Not only that, but the Strait of Hormuz and Iran clogging it up is causing oil prices to skyrocket. I believe crude oil right now, or Brent crude oil, is around 112. It peaked the other morning at 119, and then Trump had let off some reserves to kind of relieve that pressure, as well as the fact that we released some sanctions on Iran to relieve some of that pressure. So we're, in a way, like hurting our enemy, but helping them so we don't look bad on the international stage. Got it. We'll get into that. But ultimately, if the United States is to pull out, which is the idea that Trump seems to be flirting with here, and I don't know, you can't really take anything Trump has been saying serious lately because he contradicts himself inside of sentences, let alone months or weeks. Well then, yeah, that'll be a W for us Americans because we won't be involved in a situation that benefits a country that's already got a death grip on our politics. But at the same time, optically, we're going to look stupid, especially Donald Trump and his administration. You started a war with Iran. You bombed the crap out of their capital. You bombed the crap out of their military sites. You killed 180 schoolgirls in one of your strikes on the first or second day, which, by the way, you lied about on Air Force One when the press had asked you about it. You were questioned and you said, well, I don't know who launched that strike. It doesn't seem like it was us. I don't think that was us. I have to fact check that. It seems like that was Iran. They're inaccurate with their munitions. And then the camera pans over to Pete Hegseth and they ask him the same question. He says, well, we're investigating. Well, which one is what? And we have confirmed intelligence reports that those missiles and those strikes were us. By the way, they were done by Tomahawk missiles, which are only owned really by the United States. And even on top of that, use your head. Why would Iran kill their own people to justify going to war with the United States when the United States already attacked Iran first? What kind of sense does that make? That's ridiculous. It's ludicrous. And so I'm just so tired of all the millennials and Gen Xers eating this up. And there's really needs to be some aggressive response on this. There really needs to be a mainstream narrative that Trump is an idiot and he's dim-witted. And, you know, CNN is doing a good job in their coverage. Unfortunately, obviously they hate Trump, but they've weaponized all of these truths and they've utilized them effectively to give accurate reporting of the news. And they've been on the ball. And I've been saying this. So it's shit show top to bottom in regards to the Trump administration trying to cover up and collect themselves as to why we're at war and what's going to happen. But that's the important question that we've reached now. The question that we've reached now is what happens in these next few weeks. Okay, we started our air campaign. We started our air assault. We've destroyed several military targets. We've killed several leaders. So now we're at the point where we feel like we've covered tons of ground. That's what Pete Hegseth is using as bragging rights. But again, we haven't really stopped any of their military capabilities. This is why I believe we're going to enter a ground invasion phase next, because that's the way the wind is blowing. That's kind of the only thing that I see brewing in the storm ahead of us. If you see anything else, you're not paying attention. So I'll read this article. It's from CBS News. It says, and it's titled, 2nd Marine Expeditionary Unit of around 2,200 Marines, 3 warships headed to Middle East as Iran war continues. So let me ask, before I get into the article, again, how do we reconcile this with Donald Trump's Truth Social post? It seems like Donald Trump understands this war is highly unpopular despite his claims to the CNN that he had a 100% approval rating or whatever. And I have to fact check that. I don't know if that's true. I'm sure it's BS, as Trump has been lying profusely lately. But how do we reconcile these two facts? That Trump says we're done, but then we're sending tons of military assets to posture ourselves up even further in that region. And it's obvious. I think Trump is kind of playing the ploy or playing the part that this is concluding, it's wrapping up, you don't have to look anymore, don't worry. And then we'll probably launch some sort of ground invasion coming soon. That's just my speculation. There's no confirmed reports of that. But again, to not see that this is the direction in which things are going would be a little naive. So this reads, a second Marine Expeditionary Unit of about 2,200 Marines and 3 warships is headed towards the Middle East as the war with Iran continues. The unit departed California earlier this week, according to 2 U.S. officials. The first one, which is coming from the Pacific, is still making its way towards the region. So that first one a few weeks ago or last week is still on the way. And the second unit may take a few weeks to be in place. Again, pay attention to the details here. We are knowingly sending, by the way, one of our strongest U.S. warships, the USS Tripoli. We'll get into that in a moment. But an amphibious assault ship that has strong military capability, some of our best stuff. And we know that that's going to reach the region in maybe 2 weeks. But Trump is saying we're wrapping things up. This isn't brinksmanship. This is extra fortification of our already existing presence in order to effectuate the second stage of this war, which will be likely boots on the ground. But I digress. I'll continue reading. The USS Tripoli, an amphibious assault ship that had been deployed to Japan, is a part of the first group. It's the most updated of the amphibious warships, known as a big deck, which allows more room for F-35 stealth fighter jets, Ospreys, and other aircrafts. Okay, an amphibious ready group Marine Expeditionary Unit was last used when the USS Iwo Jima was involved in the operation removing Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro from power. The group is also involved in drug interdiction and oil cargo ship interception and remains deployed in the Caribbean. On Thursday, the president dismissed questions about boots on the ground in the Middle East. This is where I said he contradicted himself inside of a sentence. He says, "No, I'm not putting troops anywhere," the president told reporters in the Oval Office. And then he continues to say, quote, "If I were, I certainly wouldn't tell you, but I'm not putting troops." What? Who answers a question like that? He's lost his mind. I'll read it again. He says, "No, I'm not putting troops anywhere. If I were, I certainly wouldn't tell you. But you just told us that you're not doing it." And then he goes, "But I'm not putting troops." Okay, so you're sending. So this is. Let's go through this. You go on Truth Social and you say, "We're all set in the Middle East. Looks like things are wrapping up." Okay, he brags and he boasts in his silly rants on Truth Social, whatever. And then you also simultaneously tell the media that we're not putting troops anywhere. Okay, those two things line up. But you're sending 2 of your, or 3 of you, some of your best naval assets, as well as 2,500 Marines, to pile on to the others that you sent last week that will arrive there in a couple weeks. Now, it's obvious what the goal of this amphibious presence is for. It's obviously to kind of loosen some of the blockade that Iran has imposed in the Strait of Hormuz. So this is what Iran has effectively done, and it's honestly been the biggest kicker to the United States in regards to the whole idea of asymmetric warfare. Of course, Iran controls about 80% of the Strait of Hormuz. I think Oman previously had the other 20% under control, but it's a very tight passageway, about 20 miles from one shore to the other, if I'm not mistaken. And so obviously these ships that are exporting oil in and out, about 20% of the world's oil goes in and out of there, 80% of the Gulf's oil goes in and out of there, have halted in their maneuvers or, their tasks of going through, the everyday route that they're used to. That's because of threats that are coming from Iran, as well as their presence of missiles or their presence of drones or whatever else they threaten to deploy upon these ships. Now, the threats alone are enough to make oil prices volatile, even with or without action. Nevertheless, these ships have held back in actually crossing the strait anyways. And again, that's due to the fact that Iran is threatening them. And why would you want to call Iran's bluff? They've already attacked several Gulf countries in which Trump said himself he didn't see coming. So they've been leveraging this against us. And here's the issue. And this is why this is so asymmetric. For Iran, their job is to just disrupt this strait. You've got this narrow passageway. You've got a lot of the world's oil going in and out of it, at least 20%, which makes a big effect on the global scale, and it ripples across. And we've already felt that in the United States as gas prices have been climbing slowly but surely. So they just have to really disrupt this strait. They have to threaten these ships. They have to have a military presence, use their underwater landmines, and have their drones floating within the air and scare these ships away from crossing the strait. The United States has to secure and reopen this said strait, with Iran being right next to it. So geostrategically, they're in a great position to disrupt everything. And geostrategically, the United States is in the worst position to secure and reopen this strait. Why? Because we're sending several expensive amphibious assault naval ships to the region. And we've already sent, I think, a couple last week, but we sent 3 already today, or at least earlier this week. This report is from today. And it's our job to kind of secure and reopen this very narrow passageway. This is asymmetric. It's way more difficult, exceedingly difficult actually, for us to try and open this up, as Iran just casually can play around with the strait and not block it, but disrupt it to the point where they cause oil prices to spike, which in turn makes Trump lift sanctions on Russia. So again, forcing the U.S. into a compromising position, one that won't benefit us as long as this war continues. As this war builds in time and it drags on longer, Iran only gets stronger. Why? Because one, they're existing past Trump's bold claims that it would only be 4 to 6 weeks. But two, they find more ways to leverage their position in the world against us. What's another way they've been doing this? Well, it's obvious. They've been attacking our Gulf allies. The entire GCC has been subjugated to Iranian missiles for the last 4 weeks. Kuwait is still getting hit. And matter of fact, the foreign minister had said that we're going to let off and maybe stop attacking our Gulf countries. We don't want to attack them anymore, because his goal is really to disrupt the military presence of the United States there, more than to actually damage these countries or kill the people. And if they have been targeting any civilian infrastructure, it's because they probably have the intelligence go ahead that there's some sort of key American personnel or intelligence there, or Israeli personnel or Mossad there. So that's why maybe you may have seen strikes on hotels. That's my line of logic or reasoning. I don't think that they would just send a random drone at a hotel. I get the Iranians are evil. It is an evil regime. But I don't know if that really makes any sense in warfare, especially when you need to hold on to every single drone or missile that you have. Even if you're building a lot, every single one counts and it matters. So again, Iran has been very effective in this whole asymmetric idea. And the United States has a bigger issue. We've got to be able to open this straight up. And Trump has been using several different methods to do this. And he's kind of been gaslighting his NATO partners. And I'll show you how he's been doing that. But let's get into what's happening on the ground, and then we'll get back into the Trump situation with NATO. Let's read some chats before we do that. OSS Mall, thank you so much for the 5 gifted, my friend. God bless. You're always showing support. I really appreciate you, man. E. Lewis says, thank fuck we have Riyadh tonight. No, Myron. Yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy the show. My brother is taking a break tonight, but he'll have an all-day marathon stream tomorrow. So, and then Daily Griff, $20, says, also, I'm concerned about our long-term relationship with Japan. This matters to us on so many levels. Yeah, and then he says, Jesus is my savior, and I have not ever one time had a negative interaction with Muslim people. Muslims are not the enemy. I'm Christian. Yeah, man. Shout out to you. And I agree. I've never really had an issue with a Christian ever in my life. I don't have any issues with the theology. I don't have any issues with the people. And right, like Christ says in the Bible or in the New Testament, you'll know them by their fruits. Christians come from good fruit. So I've always been gracious to Christians, and for the most part, they've always been gracious with me. And we can't let a certain group of people drive a wedge between us, which has been the exact goal for the last 25 years. Desert Joe says, like and subscribe. It spreads its high IQ info in the YouTube algorithm. Thank you so much, Desert Joe, for the 10. Yes, it does. Like the video, show some love so we can get this live stream pushed and get the truth out to the masses. I see a lot of people, I've seen this several times, so I'll just address it now. People are saying, or asking if I'm on Kick. I'm not on Kick, but maybe I will. We'll see. Maybe that'll be a reality soon. But for now, I'll just be on YouTube. But I understand the sentiment to kind of be safe. All right. So let's get into these updates on the ground. And I haven't even read all of these. Like I said, there's just something new every few moments. And these are kind of micro updates. Nothing really groundbreaking besides what I've kind of went into. But 9 minutes ago, we have Iranian missiles launching towards southern Israel. We have alarms going off all over Israel. And a U.S. Victoria base in Baghdad has been struck, or the U.S. Victoria base, by some projectiles. Here's the video. Okay. So again, as we speak, the Iranian offensive continues to these Gulf countries. All right. So there's that. and a couple ballistic missiles have been intercepted in Israel. But take a look at this. This is what I wanted to go over. So Iran issued an evacuation order. This was earlier today to the people of the UAE in Ras Al Khaimah. It says here, to citizens and residents in the city of Ras Al Khaimah in the United Arab Emirates, given this area is being used for operations targeting Iranian islands, the city of Ras Al Khaimah has become a target during the upcoming period. All residents are requested to leave the city as soon as possible per Iran's evacuation order. So, again, it seems like the Gulf countries and Saudi Arabia has kind of echoed the sentiment that they're going to kind of arm up and join the United States full-fledged now in this war and just become a part of it. In the beginning, it seemed like they didn't really want to intervene, but now they've kind of come to the point where they said, you know what, they keep striking our infrastructure, they keep striking our oil refineries, they keep hitting even civilian infrastructure. For that, we're going to join the United States and shut these guys down once and for all. And the GCC does have some military capabilities. They borrow a lot of weapons from the United States, but it's really going to render useless until soldiers are on the ground in either Karg Island or anywhere in Iran where there's nuclear sites underground or located. So it'll be a fleeting gain, and I'm positive on that prediction, and we'll see what happens as they gear up their military response against Iran. I don't know if these are bluffs, but Mohammed bin Zayed, the leader of the UAE, had recently said in a statement that he's going to join the United States in their war, even if it lasts several months. Actually, it says right here, UAE Foreign Minister Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed told his counterpart, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, that the UAE is prepared for the war to last up to 9 months, a U.S. official tells Middle East Eye. So they're ready for things to drag on, and apparently they're going to join on in. Again, furthermore, the attitude in Riyadh has shifted towards supporting the U.S. If you don't know, Riyadh is a city in Saudi Arabia. As a way to punish Iran for strikes on the kingdom, U.S. and Western officials had told the Middle East Eye as well. So, again, another report, Saudi Arabia has agreed to open King Fahd Air Base in Ta'if in Western Saudi Arabia to the Americans for its war on Iran, again, from Middle East Eye. So it seems like these Gulf allies have kind of geared up and decided to join. Now, look, these Gulf allies have never really been a fan of Iran. There's no secret there. Saudi Arabia and Iran have historically always had tension, although they've relieved some of that tension in recent years. And it was public-facing sentiment for the last few months that Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, really didn't want any sort of war in the region. He wanted peace, in which I believed. And of course, the reason for that is, guys, these Gulf countries make a ton of money on tourism. And so if there's conflict, if there's war, if there's missiles flying over people's heads, who's going to invest in that region? What rich people are going to be attracted to such an environment? As well as the fact that even when this concludes, a lot of people are going to be fearful that something like this can happen again at a moment's notice, like it did just 3 weeks ago. And so this is damaging to their economy because they make a ton of money on tourism. Of course, oil is their hottest commodity, but as time progresses, that's going to prove to be a lot less effective than it currently is. So as we know, the world is kind of moving towards the direction of rare earth, natural metals, other things like that, not just primarily oil. So we'll see where that goes. But take a look at this. And again, this is what's going to be weaponized from the international community against the United States and Israel. So horrific scenes here. Take a look at this. This is in Kuwait.
القواعد الأمريكية في الكويت تحترق. يا الله يا محمد يا علي.
All right, well, this guy's a Shia. So here this reads, multiple impacts from Iranian projectiles in Kuwait. Again, a U.S. base most likely, and that's what he's saying here. More videos again. This is southern Iran. We have smoke cloud in the air. Okay. But several updates. And I don't know if you guys saw this. This is huge. So the IRGC made a bold claim. I think it's true because the CNN confirmed it here that they shot down an F-35. Now, although it was able to land allegedly, this is the first time in history this has ever happened, and I think it happened again just yesterday. Take a look at this. So you can see jets in the sky, gets hit with a missile. That is crazy. And furthermore, to add on, look at this like pro-Iranian post here. Got the music in the back. And of course they're going to boast about this. So Crazy stuff. This is the first time that that's ever happened to an F-35. And I think that's like a $2 trillion jet, if I'm not mistaken. Anyone want to fact check that? I'm not sure, but I think that's what I had read a long time ago. This is expensive military equipment. And so, yeah, this war is derailing in terms of the United States and in our favor. Definitely not going our way. And let's see what other updates we have here on the ground. I got a couple videos from what I believe to be Israel, although you got to be careful with what you're seeing on X. So take a look at this. Iranian missiles hit parts of Tel Aviv with loud explosions. Obvious gaps in these interceptor systems. More here, it seems like. Keep going through this. Again, this is the IDF issuing an urgent evacuation warning to residents in Beirut's southern suburbs. Obviously, you know, Hezbollah and Lebanon have been heavily involved in the conflict as well. Here we have the Victoria base that I was mentioning earlier. A little bit of smoke in the air. Okay. And then we got more videos. This is a better video of that base in Iraq. Baghdad airport. So they're still wreaking havoc on these Gulf countries, man. Despite the fact that they're so distracted, still wreaking havoc. So let's take a look at what Trump had said to, I think, CNN. I'm not sure who, but this is from Fox News, and this is tweeted by our guy Suleiman. Let me make sure I'm caught up on chats. Hang on. Like the video, everybody. Bank Hill says, thanks for the info. Thank you for the super chat, my friend. Sogno Sprite says, thoughts on Tucker's video with Professor Zhang? Tucker had a video with Professor Zhang? Is that real? I'm not seeing that. Are you trolling me? Oh, wow. Wait, is this real? It might be behind a paywall, though. Come on, Tucker. Okay, well, I guess they collabed if what I'm seeing is legit here. Yeah, Tucker Carlson Network. Oh, I didn't get to watch it. I wonder if that'll get clipped up if this is real.
Unfortunately.
Oh, they went global. They went not global. Sorry, they went virtual. Okay, let's see what he says here. See if I agree.
It is the nature of the Chinese government not to interfere in foreign affairs. China doesn't really have a geopolitical framework, a grand strategy. It really believes in global trade. And it doesn't really have a framework for how to resolve armed conflict. And so Chinese policymakers are really stuck. And in fact, Chinese policymakers have come out publicly saying that they would like the carnage, the violence in the Middle East to stop as soon as possible, and for the Strait of Hormuz to open up. But unfortunately, as I pointed out previously, when a war starts, it achieves a momentum and a logic of its own. And it's very hard to stop a war once it starts.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think China's going to get directly involved in this war. So that's crazy. I didn't even know. Thanks for the super chat. Chad's making fun of him. Yeah, I mean, I don't mind Professor Zhang. I see Sneeko reacts to him a lot or like learns from his stuff. I think there's benefits to take from everything he teaches. I just think he's really wrong on a lot of things he teaches about Islam, like some of the suggestions he's made. But I like him. I don't really have an issue with him, but I mean, I don't watch him, to be honest. But that's true, yeah. I don't think China's going to get involved. They're going to sit back. Okay, let's see what Trump had to say in regards to this ground invasion. We'll watch his... He kind of was talking to the press before he got on either his helicopter or his plane, I can't remember, but he was talking to the press outside of what I believe to be the White House. And check out the questions.
Polls have shown that MAGA is essentially unified behind you, as are Republicans when it comes to
I know that's low, so we'll crank that up.
Iran. There's been reports. Polls have shown that MAGA is essentially unified behind you, as are Republicans when it comes to Iran. There's been reports that the United States might be sending 2,500 Marines to the Middle East. Are you concerned that a move like that could potentially change the unity?
Well, I don't know. I seem to have great support because CNN came out with a poll today that I'm at 100%. And they said they've never seen a poll like that. The CNN poll said I'm at 100%, and they've never seen that before, which is an honor. I was impressed that CNN would do that. But as far as troops are concerned, I can't tell you what we're doing.
Mr. President.
Okay, so yeah, that's what we wanted to hear the whole time. Bragged for 30 seconds. That's how long this clip is. 30 seconds. Well, you know, CNN, they love me, CNN. It's like, hey, bro, what the fuck are we doing with all these Marines that you're deploying into the region? He goes.
But as far as troops are concerned, I can't tell you what we're doing.
Mr. President.
All right, bro. Well, I'll tell you what we're doing with them. We're probably putting them on the ground in the next few weeks. So there's that. Gotta love Trump. Let's see what else we have here. Got a lot of stuff to go over. So this is Pete Hegseth. This was yesterday. I'm a little bit late on this. I think my brother covered this already, but really quickly, we'll go over what he had said in the Pentagon. Quote, it takes money to kill bad guys. So you got Trump outside of the Marine One talking about how he's the best president ever, his approval rating's high, and that, don't worry, we won't have any boots in the ground. And then he's also saying at the same time, I'm not ruling that out. And intelligence is suggesting that may become a reality and they're waiting on orders only. So everything's all over the place. Oops, you got this dummy.
$200 billion. I think that number could move, obviously. It takes money to kill bad guys. So we're going back to Congress and our folks there to ensure that we're properly funded for what's been done, for what we may have to do in the future, ensure that our ammunition is everything's refilled, and not just refilled, but above and beyond. I mean, President Trump, as he said, rebuilt the military in his first term, didn't think he'd use it as dynamically in his second, but he had. So thank goodness he did that. And an investment like this is meant to say, hey, we'll replace anything that was spent. And now that we're reviving our defense industrial base and rebuilding the arsenal of freedom and cutting deals like our great deputy secretaries here is doing, long lead times on exquisite munitions, we're going to be refilled faster than anyone imagined. And I think, we're also still dealing with the environment that Joe Biden created.
All right, blame Biden. I'm not trying to be a Democrat apologist here. Biden actually worked very hard at the beginning of his term to try and salvage what he could from Obama's previous agreement with Iran, that being the nuclear deal, the JCPOA. So say what you want about Biden. Yeah, the border crisis is real, and yeah, he had the worst border ever, but his foreign policy was at least a little bit better. It was, really his low move to try and go to Biden as if Biden wasn't going to actually be the antidote to never bring us to war with Iran. And that's the problem with the neocons as opposed to like the neo-libs or the neo-leftists, is like they've just got this obsession with presence in the Middle East. And it's very opportunistic for AIPAC. It's very opportunistic for lobbyists to get behind these guys because they just concede. They don't fight. Obama fought against this Israeli sentiment that Iran needed to be decapitated. Obama actually fought against the Israeli settlers in the West Bank, which provoked tons of backlash from Israelis and Benjamin Netanyahu himself. So, you can blame Biden. Biden obviously was not the best. He was shit. But in regards to his foreign policy, specifically regarding Iran, it was actually a lot better than your administration. So,
which was depleting those stockholds and not sending them to our own military, but to Ukraine, which is every time we reach back and look at any sort of a challenge we have.
Yeah, but Ukraine is still ongoing.
It goes back to.
By the way, Trump said he would end Ukraine in 24 hours. He would end that war in 24 hours. We're about a year in.
Well, send it to Ukraine. Ultimately, we think this should be these munitions are better spent in our own interests at this point, and this kind of funding bill is going to ensure that we're properly funded going forward. We'll take.
So, Pete Hegseth trying to do damage control that it's only going to be $200 billion, as if that money alone couldn't fix like half of the problems our country faces. So that's war at Iran for you. That's war for the good doing or the bidding of Israel. You got to be happy about that if you're an American, I guess. But it is what it is. Daily Griff says, I hope Russia will provide an off-ramp for this war. U.S. should become allies with Russia. Again, like in the early 2000s, U.S. would be much stronger and richer and more respected if we made more peace. Yeah, maybe I disagree. I don't know if we should be allies with Russia again, but we just shouldn't really be we just shouldn't be in the Middle East because it gives them a much better position over us. Daily Griff says, Russia strong enough to help with off-ramp de-escalation. Yeah, they can. They can. I agree. Thanks for the super chats, by the way, man. They certainly can, but it's not even a matter of like a country getting involved. It just depends on if Trump is going to be honest with himself. See, Trump has reached a crossroads where now he's realized I've got to be all in or I've got to be all out. I can't keep doing this like we bomb this, we bomb that, because after weeks and after months, what I'm saying is going to be public information. Like what I'm saying right now is rather unpopular, which is we shouldn't be in Iran. Iran is not actually a dangerous nation. They don't pose a threat to the United States. We're killing innocent people. These people are Muslims. These people are my people, despite the fact that they're Shia. So it actually bothers me even more than that. But at the same time, I don't like the IRGC. I think that they're a crazy regime. I think that the way they spin their religion is heretical. But I'm being honest in saying that this war is not favoring the United States, as well as the fact that if Iran does not exist anymore, let's say we successfully complete this whole campaign of regime change, what you'll quickly come to find is that, and I've said this before, but maybe we have new people in here tonight, Israel will gain a scary and an uncontrollable, really that's the important term to use here, uncontrollable amount of leverage in the Middle East. The Middle East is a pivotal region. It's critically important not only to have allies there, but to have some sort of control. The control we had was being able to mitigate or really mediate issues between Israel and any other Arab or Muslim country, that being Iran, because Iran is obviously the biggest one that's posed a threat to them. Them and Saddam Hussein historically have kind of been like the two big bad bullies. Obviously, you had the clean break strategy, the clean break memo in 96, I believe it was, which was proposed to eventually take out Saddam Hussein, in which we did under George Bush. And now we've got the whole war on nuclear weapons, war on terror. They got proxy networks. They got this. That's going to motivate the United States to eventually decapitate or completely destroy the IRGC. But the problem with the IRGC, they're not Iran. Or I'm sorry, they're not Iraq. The IRGC is not Syria. The IRGC is not Afghanistan. The IRGC is not Libya. This is a well put together, fortified army that the United States could beat, but it would cost a whole lot. And it would also cost us to do things that we don't want to do, like boots on the ground. How do I know we don't want to do that? Because the president who started this war is hesitating in admitting that's his plan, which it obviously is. It obviously is. So, top to bottom, it's an L. But, you know, hopefully, as this war drags on, what I'm anticipating, if we go for 2, 3, 4, who knows, 6, 7 months, or even to a year, 6, 7 months, you'll find that the public will really become dissatisfied with this war. They'll really go, what the hell are we doing? Why are we continuously bombing Iran? Why do we have boots on the ground? So as time progresses, this helps Iran and destroys the United States, especially from the populist perspective. I hope there's some sort of political off-ramp that Trump will be willing to take. It's there for him. It's just a matter if he wants to do it. But you've got to remember, Trump is an egomaniac. He's psychotic when it comes to his image, his power, how he's respected, how he's perceived in the international community and domestically. And so for Trump, what's important is making it look like he's won this war. And that really scares me, because what length is he going to go to make it seem that way? What length is he going to go to give the perception that the United States won? Because I'll tell you right now, if we pull out, it's not going to look that way. Why? Because, yeah, we've killed their leadership, but they've replaced that. We've destroyed some missile launchers, but they have plenty more where that came from. Obviously, as we're seeing these strikes in the Gulf, as I'm speaking right now, there's sirens sounding off in Israel. And so we haven't really covered much ground when it comes to nullifying their military capabilities. And that's why I don't predict Trump will end things right now. Now, he's taking to Truth Social, like I said, and he says, we're kind of nearing the end of this conflict and maybe we won't do this again and whatever. But to me, again, I think that's just kind of a psyop to continue this war without people paying too much attention. If you haven't been paying attention, Trump has been catching the most heat that he's really caught in this presidency, in this term, his second term. This is probably the most backlash he's faced besides the ICE deportations, but this arguably may be worse because it's trickling down throughout his cabinet. You've got the Epstein files, then you've got the war in Iran, but with the Epstein files, you had Pam Bondi being the subject of criticism. Now you've got Donald Trump, Pete Hegseth, Marco Rubio, Tulsi Gabbard, everybody else in the administration being fried for this war. And the problem with this war is deaths will come from it. Casualties will come from it. It's happening currently. Not only that, but our Gulf countries and our allies in the Middle East although they may claim to want to support us now, what happens when this war is over? Are they still going to be allied with us? Are they still going to have strategic alliances or be parallel with us? The answer is potentially not. Russia's next door, China's next door. Who knows what they prop up? Who knows what they pitch in the direction of the Gulf countries in the GCC to pull them away from us, even if it's small deals here and there. You got to understand, these smaller countries need a big superpower to rely on and have a key strategic relationship with. And if being a partner with the United States means every single time they start a war in the Middle East, the bases that they have in your country to protect you put you in danger, you're probably not going to maintain that relationship much longer. So it's just a multitude of problems that have kind of come to light since this war has started. But I'll admit, everything that I'm explaining here, and this is not to toot my own horn as if like I've uncovered this mystery or anything, but it's not really become super mainstream yet. You still got a lot of people supporting Trump. You still got a large amount of the voter base over 40 who are indifferent about this war or potentially even in support of it. But as time progresses, they will come to know and they will wake up. So that's what I'm hoping on. Somebody says, oh, Daily Griff, you said that. Scariest thing is I don't see any off-ramp. Yeah, no, I don't either. And that's why I just kind of went on about it. I don't know if I see the potentiality of an off-ramp or some sort of diplomacy. And Iran had already made claims that they're not coming to the table unless the United States is able to meet them on certain conditions, many of which we won't. But the one that sticks out to me is the idea of us lifting sanctions on them. We've imposed sanctions on Iran so we can eventually start war there by destabilizing their country and then using that as an excuse. Look, the civilians are mad. Look, everybody's pissed. Yeah, they're pissed because they can't buy bread. Yeah, they're pissed because they have record high inflation. That's why they're upset. They're not upset because this regime is this Islamic terroristic. Yeah, you've got your sub-fringe categories of people who are complaining about that, like Patrick Bet-David, but he's not in Iran. He's here. And quite frankly, any of the Iranians that are here don't have any right to talk about what's going on in Iran because you're here. And I know that's going to catch a lot of heat. They're going to cry when they hear that. But here's the reality is Israel is going to have complete control over that region if the IRGC falls. So ask yourself, is that what you would want? Because if the answer is yes, then you don't care about America. So you've reached this crossroads where you may say the IRGC needs to fall and the Ayatollah is terroristic. And although even me, myself, I don't agree with the IRGC. I think they are a crazy regime. They've killed more Sunni Muslims than people even know, by the way, my people. So trust me, I don't like them either. But I understand they strategically exist for a beneficial region that guarantees American hegemony, American power, and Israel to be left at bay rather than imposing themselves on the entire region and expanding their borders, which is a part of their ultimate goal. So if you're a secular Persian or you're an Iranian and you're against this war, you've got to look at things from a bigger picture. I don't want to be so conspiratorial here, but it's quite obvious what the goal of Israel is in the next 10 or 20 or even 30 years. You've got the red heifers, you got everything else in between. I don't want to get too in the weeds here because we're on YouTube and I've got to be careful with what I'm really saying. But nevertheless, I think you kind of understand the conclusion that I'm coming to. Questions you've got to ask yourself. Weigh the pros and the cons. And look, I'm sure many people on the ground in Iran, in Tehran or anywhere else outside of Tehran or even far away, maybe not like the Ayatollah as well, but they sure as hell don't like America and Israel more. If there's a bigger enemy, it would be America and Israel. So, got to ask yourself that question. At the end of the day, their country has been sucking. Their country has been in degradation for years. They've been struggling. Despite this, they still build these very impressive military capabilities like their missiles, like their nukes, which is very hard to do with sanctions. And so that's how you know Iranians are super smart. But the people feel this more than the government, actually. And that's what causes them to be upset. So instead of pointing the finger at the Islamists and running with the same age-old narrative, kind of use your head and really understand who the greater enemy is here and what things will look like in the next 20 years if Israel is able to accomplish their goals. Speaking of Israel, let's see what Benjamin Netanyahu has to say. This was, I think, yesterday or 2 days ago. By the way, he's not dead. He's here. I see people saying this is an AI video. Guys, we've got to get serious here. Okay, enough with the brain rot. Okay, I like the conspiracies. I'm all for the conspiracies, but the guy's not dead. Like, we got to be critical. We got to be realistic. This is real shit. People are getting hit, killed. We got 180 schoolgirls dying in war. You can't be running around with this whole AI hopeful, wishful narrative thing. Like, he's here. let's focus on what's important. You know, I'm really sick and tired of like the X brain rot. Because if you went on your X timeline last Saturday, it was unexplainable how many people were actually falling for the narrative that he was dead. So, and that's unlikely to happen for obvious reasons I don't think I need to explain. But let's see what he had to say.
You know, they have to explode those conditions at a certain point. It is often said that you can't do revolutions from the air. That is true. You can't do it only from the air. You can do a lot of things from the air, and we're doing, but there has to be a ground component as well.
He's right. He's right. This is bad that he's right. This is not a good thing, but he's right. You cannot, by the way, if you disagree with me, then you also disagree with U.S. intelligence, the best intelligence in the world, arguably. You cannot effectuate regime change without some sort of ground component. This is 1,000,000% factual. Again, this is what Trump has been strategically stepping over and trying his best not to explain or really, contextualize for the press. And he's being asked this question nonstop. Are you going to put boots on the ground? You're sending Marines. You're sending an amphibious presence larger than we've ever seen in the Middle East. We're deploying so many troops. What are you doing with all of this posturing of the military? Why are you fortifying our military presence? We already have complete air dominance in Iran. And Trump is saying nothing. I'll tell you what they want to do. They probably want to do a ground invasion on Karg Island, right off of the coast of Iran. I'll show you guys where that is, just in case you're unfamiliar. And the idea of this started circulating like last week. So this is Karg Island. As you can see, I don't know if it's like 20-ish miles, 40 miles, whatever. I think like 50 miles, whatever. But this is an island right off of the coast of Iran. Its purpose, you can read here. The Forbidden Island is a continental island on Iran in the Persian Gulf. The island is 25 kilometers, so 16 miles off of the coast of Iran. Oh, okay, so I was right around 20. Northwest of the Strait of Hormuz. The island lies close to several offshore oil fields, and then it continues to read, before it developed into a major oil terminal in the 1960s, it was famously called the Orphan Pearl or of the Persian Gulf. The island contains several important archaeological sites, including ruins of Christian monasteries dating from possibility as far as back in the 7th century. There are also tombs, temples, all this other different stuff. But Saddam Hussein, and I want to see if they're going to mention this somewhere here. Saddam Hussein had tried to invade this island. It didn't work because it's defended from an extreme, let's see, City of Karg Island. But guys, this is where they're planning on invading. Can almost bet you. And so, highly fortified island. Let's see if we can get a video. Somebody kind of explaining everything.
Karg Island. Could this small island be the key to who wins the war? It's located about 26 kilometers off the coast of Iran. And despite its size, around 8 to 9 kilometers long, it's a critical hub for the country's energy industry. It handles the vast majority of Iran's oil exports. In fact, 90% of crude oil is taken from Iran through pipes to this terminal.
All right, I've said this.
And it's deep.
I wanted to see if she was going to bring up Saddam Hussein. That's fine. We'll stay on track here. Let's see what else Bibi has to say.
There are many possibilities for this ground component, and I take the liberty of not sharing with you all those possibilities. They have to explode those conditions.
Yeah, so, again. All right, thank you, Prime Minister Netanyahu. Please don't stop until the regime has fallen. L. But, yeah, someone says, then put your boots on the ground instead of Americans. Yo. So true. So true. Anyways, let's move on to Trump's Truth Social meltdown. So there's two posts or tweets, whatever you call them, on this weird platform that he let out. We'll go over this one first because this is a bigger deal, and this was recent. This was earlier today, this afternoon at 5:13 p.m. So this is the whole big deal. This is what's kind of been breaking in the news recently. Before I read this, let's get into chats. I think I had a couple chats. One moment, please. Thank you guys for all the love. Like the video. Send in some chats if you have any questions. Okay. Ivan Leo says, stay strapped or get. He continued that in another one. Clap. Thank you so much. Okay. Michaka 171 Riyadh, W Riyadh for putting on a shirt. Okay, very funny. Very funny. Okay, good joke. Yeah, because I'm dark. Yeah, because you can't see me when I have a black t-shirt on. Haha. Nah, good joke, good joke. Okay, let's see what Trump had to say here. So bear in mind everything that I've been covering the last hour. Bear in mind that we're sending more military reinforcements, about 2,500 Marine troops into the Middle East that will arrive there in 2 weeks. They're not going to get there right away. Even the first batch that we sent out last week is still on its way to the Middle East. So keep that in mind, okay? Also keep in mind the fact that Pete Hegseth is requesting $200 billion that we're spending, okay? Also keep in mind the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu is talking about effectuating a ground invasion. Also keep in mind the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu has been very verbal and very open in the fact that Donald Trump has been obliging to every single one of his commands throughout this entire conflict. Trump has not come into any sort of tension or friction with Netanyahu in the last few months, ever since his last meeting in Washington, his 7th meeting of the year. And so it's pretty obvious that Donald Trump, if you're paying attention to the pattern, because pattern recognition is key in situations like this, if you're paying attention to the way the wind is blowing, Donald Trump is doing every single thing Benjamin Netanyahu so preciously desires in order to eventually cause the IRGC to fall. And we've covered that today. We can still see that the war is ongoing. We can still see that the United States, although they have not entered ground operations, seems to be deploying steps to hopefully enable that for themselves. Not for me. I don't want that to happen. And so let's see what Trump has to say despite all of this, and let's see if we believe him. He writes here on Truth Social, "We are getting very close to meeting our objectives as we consider winding down our great military efforts in the Middle East with respect to the terrorist regime of Iran. 1. Completely degrading Iranian missile capability, launchers, and everything else pertaining to them. 2. Destroying Iran's defense industrial base. 3. Eliminating their Navy and Air Force, including anti-aircraft weaponry. 4. Never allowing Iran to even get close to nuclear capability. I thought we took care of that in June. Anyways, and always being in a position where the USA can quickly and powerfully react to such a situation should it take place. 5. Protecting at the highest level our Middle Eastern allies, including Israel, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Kuwait, and others. The Hormuz Strait will have to be guarded and policed, as necessary by other nations who use it." So pay attention. This is the important part here. This is like the whole reason why I'm even reacting to this stupid ass tweet. The United States does not, if asked, we will help these countries in their Hormuz efforts, but it shouldn't be necessary once Iran's threat is eradicated. So I don't understand what he's trying to say here. Let's start from the top. The Hormuz Strait will have to be guarded and policed as necessary by other nations who use it. The United States does not. So now Trump is like trying to do this whole gaslighting pullback thing where he's saying, look, we started a war that's screwing up your oil prices, got nothing to do with us. You want to fix it? Well, then you better get involved, and that's the only way you'll guarantee we will help you. So to me, this is how I'm reading it. Donald Trump is attempting to, and he's been vocal about this to the press in his bilateral meeting with Japan, which was yesterday, where he had the yellow tie on, I believe. He's kind of vocalized this, but I'll break it down for you. He's saying that these countries need to get involved militarily to stop Iran in their blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Why would they do that? Why would any European country send their soldiers to go die for Israel just because oil prices have gone a little higher, which also, by the way, you've been desperately trying to bring down, which is why you've been releasing a record-breaking amount of reserves, as well as the fact that you've released sanctions on countries that we're not allied with for the sake of decreasing this pressure in regards to the Brent crude oil being at, right now, I believe, $112 per barrel. Why would these countries do that? Here's the thing. You want them to do that so they can fight your battle alongside with you. That's the whole point. That's why he's let this tweet out. That's why he's kind of echoed the similar sentiment. Trump wants to pull these NATO countries in. He's very desperate to do that. There's even more tweets where he's attacking them, and I'll go over them in a moment. But it's obvious he's trying to send this message, and he already has the Marines on the way. He already has these deployments on the way, the USS Tripoli and so on. And so they'll reach the Strait of Hormuz, I'm assuming, in the next few weeks or whatever, or however long it takes. I don't know how true that claim was by CBS News, but regardless, they're on their way. And so It's like this desperate attempt to try and pull in these countries, by the way, in which they've all responded and they've said, we are not getting involved. We don't care what President Trump has to say. We don't care about him calling us paper tigers or whatever other degrading term he wants to use. We're not stupid. We're not fighting a war that doesn't benefit our country. And we're not sending our servicemen to die for the United States and Israel, which the United States has no problem in doing. So these countries have a bigger brain than us. At least they're not as controlled by Israel as us. And that's evident because nobody else has really gotten heavily involved. So it's crazy. He continues here. If asked, we will help these countries in their Hormuz efforts, but it shouldn't be necessary once Iran's threat is eradicated. Yeah, that's true, but how are you going to eradicate Iran's threats? You're going to have to add some sort of ground component. By the way, the whole architect of this war is Benjamin Netanyahu, arguably. One of the biggest driving forces or biggest driving factors to this war starting and enabling Trump to get involved in joint strike with Israel in Iran on February 28th, it's Benjamin Netanyahu. It's Israeli officials. It's the Israeli government. And he himself, from the source, no better source to hear this from than Benjamin Netanyahu himself, he is saying, we are not going to get any sort of ground covered unless we put boots on ground, unless we put soldiers in Tehran or in Karg Island. We're not going to get a regime change. We're not going to reach our goals. We're not going to stop the IRGC, this terrorist regime. We're not going to stop the Iranians unless we put boots on the ground. So let me get this straight. Donald Trump is saying Iran's threat should be eradicated, quote directly, but it shouldn't be necessary once Iran's threat is eradicated. Okay, that's true, but it shouldn't be necessary once that happens. How will we accomplish that goal? How will that happen? How will that come to fruition? How will that materialize real time? It's only if we put people on the ground. Again, I will play the clip again if you guys think I'm crazy. Again, this is the architect of this war. This is the guy who's behind everything. This is the guy who wants us to be at war with Israel, and these are his words, not mine.
You can do a lot of things from the air, and we're doing, but there has to be a ground component as well. There are many possibilities for this ground component, and I take the liberty of not sharing with you all those possibilities.
I mean, man, it just doesn't get any more obvious. How much more obvious could it be that Netanyahu knows what's going to happen? He knows what's to come, but he has to be very, very careful in his wording. So I'm tired of this loose-ended narrative. I'm tired of this whole, you're being ridiculous. The United States is not going to get boots on ground. I remember me and my brother were going live back in, I believe, February, before the war had started, because this war had started at the end of the month, but like February 3rd, 4th, around the time of the Super Bowl, we were talking about the Iran conflict, and we noticed that tensions were heating up, and we said, look, if we enter a war with Iran, we're probably going to have to put American soldiers on the ground. And everybody said, you're crazy, you're a pro-Iranian, you're a stupid Muslim jihadi. And it's like, okay, bro, you can continue to cry, but looks like I'm vindicated in that prediction. And this is obvious because all of their assets are underground. So, you know, if you don't take it from me, just take it from the man himself. Who better to hear that from than Benjamin Netanyahu, the one who caused the United States to get into this conflict. By the way, this is the guy who worked hard to ensure Trump would be in office. This is the guy who got several standing ovations from Congress when he condemned Obama's JCPOA Iran nuclear deal. This is the guy who's got Congress on his side. He's got a ton of power. He's got a ton of knowledge. He is the brains behind this entire motive in this conflict. Let's see what else Trump has to say. He said this yesterday. This is at 9:43. Or no, this is this morning. Sorry. Without the USA, NATO is a paper tiger. They didn't want to join the fight to stop a nuclear-powered Iran. Now that fight is militarily won. What does this vague, loose-ended term mean, militarily won? I'm sorry, how did we militarily win this war? Pete Hegseth is asking for $200 billion. Pete Hegseth is justifying why we're spending ludicrous amounts of money on such a short conflict. How is it militarily won when you said this would last only 4 weeks, and we're reaching the 4-week mark tomorrow? We're at 3.5, or really 3 weeks and some change, and we've still sent tons of military assets and the USS Tripoli off the coast of California. It's won? We won? I don't think so. as well as the fact that Israel is getting hit as we speak. And you're still having to supply. Yeah, we won the war militarily, but you're pulling THAAD systems, which are air defense systems, from South Korea to put in Israel. Yeah, we're winning the war militarily, but political officials in Saudi Arabia are complaining that we're over-prioritizing Israeli airspace over the Gulf countries' airspace. We're winning militarily, though. Certainly. This isn't asymmetric warfare. You're not having to dump oil out of your ass and reach into records amounts of reserves in order to compensate and bandage an issue that can only temporarily be bandaged, which is that of the price of oil being over $120 per barrel. That's what it was a few days ago. It came back down because of your desperate move to relieve sanctions on these countries that we're not allied with. We're militarily winning. Okay, what does that mean? We've bombed Iran? We can bomb anybody. How are we militarily winning? They still have their enrichment program. They still have their missiles program, which poses the biggest threat to Israel as we speak right now. And they still have their proxies that are fighting. By the way, the Houthis have not even made a move yet. The Houthis are in Yemen, in the south of Yemen, or really all over Yemen at this point, waiting for the drop in some sort of opening in the defenses of the United States or really Israel. And best believe they'll probably take to the Red Sea to cause more naval disruption among not only oil exports, but maybe naval carriers as well, or our military assets or Israeli military assets. So you've got all these proxy networks that are getting involved, kind of putting their foot inside and outside of the door, stepping in when it helps, stepping in when it hurts the United States and hurts Israel. And you've got the Houthis who haven't even been mobilized yet. Who knows what they'll do in the couple weeks that are coming to us, as well as the fact that Hezbollah has still been active in strikes against northern Israel. But we're militarily winning, guys. Don't worry. Let's continue to read on this crazy, crazy tweet. Now that the fight is militarily won with very little danger for them, they complain about the high oil prices they are forced to pay. Yeah, they're complaining about high oil prices because you struck Iran for no reason, and then Marco Rubio said, oh, we struck them because Israel was going to fight first. And they're blockading a critical passageway that is responsible for moving through 20% of the world's oil. But they don't want to help open the Strait of Hormuz. Yeah, if they get involved, by the way, Iran has greenlit everybody. They're striking everybody. No one's safe. So if you see Iran strike Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Iraq, Lebanon, or sorry, not Lebanon, Oman, all these different countries, are you as a European nation who's had nothing to do with this conflict historically stepping in to relieve some oil pressure? Of course not. Use your head. Anyways, so easy for them to do with so little risk. Cowards, and we will remember President Donald J. Trump. So, again, he's like trying to manipulate and gaslight these countries into thinking that they're cowards because they're not supporting the United States in this forever war that we've entered with Israel. Whatever. By the way, aren't you the same one who said we should learn from our mistakes in Iraq? It's crazy that he's like tweeting this and not expecting some sort of response. And he said more things on Truth Social. See if there's anything else. And I'll read chats in a moment. I saw a couple come through. Don't worry, I didn't forget. Yeah, so we'll see what he had to say with the Japanese Prime Minister in his bilateral meeting yesterday inside of the White House. This was around 11:59 a.m. Eastern time in the morning. But before that, we will read some chats. Ivan Leo says, darkness, everyone. Darkness, Rick James. Okay. Michaka says it's all love. Oh, bro, of course, I know. I don't care. 07, my bad, Riyadh. Bro, you're good. It's a joke. I literally didn't care at all, bro. You can make jokes at me all the time, man. Debbie Dior 361, we back. Let's go, gang. Thank you so much. Okay. Yeah, guys, 07's in the chat only, please, for obvious reasons. Just be careful. I appreciate the love all you guys, but you gotta be careful. We're not on Kick, okay? Don't want to get me shot out of the sky here. So 07's only, please.
Why is the Pentagon going to ask Congress for an additional $200 billion?
Well, we're
asking the good questions right away. You gotta love it. You gotta love it.
For a lot of reasons beyond even what we're talking about in Iran. This is a very volatile world, and the military equipment, the power of some of this weaponry is unthinkable. You don't even want to know about it.
Oh, we know about it. That Tomahawk missile killed 180 girls. We know about it, all right.
You could end this thing in 2 seconds if
Our munition, by the way, not Iran's, despite Trump's claim. So we know. Okay, we know how much the B-2 stealth bomber is. We know how much it is to actually use it. We know how much an F-35 fighter jet is. We know how much it is to actually use it. We know how much it costs to run these amphibious assault ships like the USS Tripoli. Yeah, we know. It's expensive. We get it. It's volatile, as he says. But we need to be using it for the right reason. We need the Pentagon to request this money from Congress when the reason is justified. And right now, you don't have that justification.
you wanted to, but we are.
Guys, Myron is not going live tonight. He won't be on tonight. He'll be live all day tomorrow.
We are being.
So you got the substitute teacher, sorry.
Very judicious. We want to be sure, and it's a small price to pay to make sure that we stay tippy-top.
Do you intend to potentially put U.S. troops or more troops in the region?
No, I'm not putting troops anywhere. If I were, I certainly wouldn't tell you. But
what is he saying? What do you mean?
But I'm not putting troops.
The House Speaker.
Let's just go back.
If I were, I certainly wouldn't tell you.
You just told him, though.
But I'm not putting troops.
The House Speaker, and in the House side, obviously, and the Senate Majority Leader, John Thune, both were very non-committal on the question of whether they could get the votes for what the president is clearly going to ask for, which is a big chunk of change, perhaps as much as $200 billion to go for funding more of this war. And I'll just tell you what John Thune said specifically to our colleague Ted Barrett. I think they're going to have to show us how they want to use it.
I mean, that makes clear a couple things. One, it seemed to be a number that that the Washington Post first reported that was also news to the Speaker and the Senate Majority Leader. So clearly the work had not been done to pave the way for this. But it is going to make one thing clear.
We'll see if it passes. I think it might. I think John Thune had said that we have to see how they're going to use it. That's what she had said. Which, by the way, you know, they're going to try and come up with some great justification. We'll see. But he's a majority leader, so. Okay. Let's see this. We went through this, but.
Donald Trump took questions from the South Lawn of the White House and was asked about Iran and the Strait of Hormuz and whether he plans to take military action on Karg Island. Take a listen.
I bring our great Secretary of State out, and he is doing a fantastic job. So we have Marco. Go ahead, please.
Mr. President, I wanted to ask you, Iran executed 3 people this week.
Terrible.
You have vowed strong action in the past. What message would you send?
Well, we've been hitting them awfully hard. I mean, I don't know if you can possibly get hit harder, but these are thugs and animals and horrible people. But you can't hit anybody harder than we've hit them. But I'm not surprised. They executed 3 young people for protesting.
And do you plan to escort those ships through the Strait of Hormuz with or without allies?
We're doing very well there. We're doing very well overall. You know, we don't use the strait. We don't. The United States. We don't need it. Europe needs it. Korea, Japan, China, a lot of other people. So they'll have to get involved a little bit on that one.
He's just saying it plainly. They'll have to get involved.
Do you still want South Korea support the United States?
I think the bill will get passed.
Now, what about it?
Do you still want South
I'd love to be wrong, though.
Korea support?
Well, I love South Korea. We have a great relationship with South Korea. We're helping South Korea a lot.
Mr. President, do you think Israel will be ready to end the war when you're ready?
I think so.
Mr. President.
The relationship's a very good one. I think so.
Mr. President.
We want more or less similar things. You know what we want? We want victory, both of us, and that's what we've got.
Mr. President, what's your plan for Karg Island, Mr. President? What's your plan for Karg Island?
You know,
So the reporter's asking, what is his plan for Karg Island, the one that we went over earlier. So this is the important part. I want to see what he says here because I didn't even get to react to this. you don't know, Karg Island is an island about 16 miles off the coast of Iran, responsible for tons of oil infrastructure and exports, as well as military production as well. And it's a heavily fortified island due to attacks that it's received previously.
What we've got.
Mr. President, what's your plan for Carg Island, Mr. President? What's your plan for Carg Island?
You know, I may have a plan or I may not, but how would I ever say that to a reporter? If I said that to a reporter, Marker would say, please, sir, let's bring you over to the helicopter immediately. Right? No, I can't tell you that.
Mr. President.
All right, so he's not answering the question. The answer was no. I'd like to think he would say no. Oh. Not a good sign. You got Donald Trump answering the press. They're asking him about Karg Island. He's saying, well, I don't know. You know, I don't know. And then you've got the Marines in their large numbers on their way to the Middle East. So I'm just reporting where the wind is blowing. I'm just talking about what I see. I'm only reporting on what's apparent.
It's certainly a place that's people are talking about, but I can't say. Yeah.
Are you pulling out
How will
troops
the
there
operation
now?
Epicure affect talks with Russia and Ukraine?
What about it?
Are the talks on back burner right now because of no?
We're talking about it. I think it'll get done.
Well, when do you expect the next round of talks to take place?
They take place almost every day.
We'll let this continue, but let's just read this article really quick. I thought that this was interesting. So this is by CNN, okay, and it says why the Trump administration is easing sanctions on certain Iranian oil stockpiles. Isn't that crazy? Funny how things worked, isn't it? So we'll read this in a moment. Give me 1 second. Kind of screwed my tabs here. Okay. I got some chats. I'll read these really quick before we get into the article. Oh, you said 07, my bad, because of the... Yeah, no problem, Machaka. We back, let's go, gang. Debbie Dior, thank you so much. Sugno Sprite says, please react to the Pearl Harbor comment from Trump. Okay, got that. I'll cue that. Gorilla Mike X, W Riyadh, thank you, my friend. Michaka Crazy, you got more viewers than Canadians. What Canadians? Daddy 712. I'm so mad I just said that. Is the draft coming? Love the content, bro. Thank you for the super chat. No, I don't think the draft is coming. Thank you so much for the super chat. No. I don't think that will happen. But, you know, it's still a really stressful and dire situation. Trump's Pearl Harbor comment. I'll cue it. I'm assuming this is during the bilateral meeting. Yep. Okay, it was. I don't know what he said, so this is gonna be a raw reaction. Let me get a YouTube video.
Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay.
No way. Sorry. Hold on. Let me get it on screen. Wait, I did not see this. What? It's not funny. I keep laughing at the wrong things today. Don't clip me. Please don't clip me. Yo, bro, what? Wait, no, I've got it. This is a short. I've got to get the full video. Hang on, guys. We're getting distracted, but this is crazy.
Japan and US are very good friend. But one question, why didn't you tell US allies in Europe and Asia, like Japan, about the war before attacking Iran? So we are very confused about.
Okay, so the question is, why didn't you give your European allies around Iran the heads up that you were going to attack on the 28th?
We Japanese citizens.
Well, one thing, you don't want to signal too much. You know, when we go in, we went in very hard, and we didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay? Right? You know, he's asking me, do you believe in surprise? I think much more so than us.
Oh, okay.
And,
I thought he was gonna bring up the bombs. Okay, now that's funny.
Surprise him, and we did. And because of that surprise, we knocked out, the first 2 days, we probably knocked out 50% of what and much more than we anticipated doing. So if I go and tell everybody about it, there's no longer a surprise, right?
We thank you for watching.
No way. That's funny. Look, you got to give Trump his credit. He's witty. I thought he was going to say, who knows better than surprise? We nuked the shit out of Japan in 45. I thought that's what he was going to say. Knowing Trump at this stage in his presidency, he would go there. But he just left it at the Pearl Harbor attack, which was funny. That's cute. That's cute. That's funny. Okay. I thought he was about to go to the... That's funny. Good suggestion there. Oh, Michaka. Okay, I see what you're talking about. Yeah, I won't even mention them. Who cares about them? Albo Ace says, imagine a world where all the Muslim countries are united and how strong they'd be. Yeah, I mean, they would be very strong, but they'll never unite because they're all too hard-headed. Clipped. Say my name again? Very funny. I was about to say it again. Thanks for the $2, buddy. 712, I'll call you. Yeah, they would be strong if they all allied, but that, definitely won't happen. I thought Trump was going to go, well, who knows better about surprises than Japan? We nuked them. I thought he was going to do that. I was going to go, whoa, that's crazy. But he just, I guess he didn't go there. Someone said woman PM. Yeah, facts. Okay. But yo, this is since we're like on X, did you guys see this? I don't want to derail too much, but this was crazy. I saw this last night. My brother reacted to it. So if you guys don't know, and you should, I mean, if you've been under a rock, Clavicular is a streamer who's gone ridiculously viral, mainstream at this point, for like looks maxing and whatever. He does these crazy IRL streams, very entertaining. He's funny, the whole bit. But, his whole thing is looking better because that's the most important thing in life. That's what will get you far in life, whatever. But it's not that important right now. He was in a club yesterday, IRL streaming, and he got smacked in the face by some girl. Many of you may have seen this, but maybe you didn't. So I'll go ahead and share this here. Take a look at this. So they were talking about the situation of women voting. And he didn't even say anything. He was just asking her what she was upset about. And she was claiming that he said women can't vote or something. That's what I take from like the video that gave a little bit more pre-context. But take a look at this. What a deranged psychopath. So you smack him as hard as you can across his face. By the way, complete Chad reaction. Bro didn't even move. Ate that shit. And look, right here, this is where instinct would kick in before you're able to actually process any thought, and you might hit back. So very good on Clavicular for keeping his hands to himself here. And I would like to think that I could do the same thing. But, hey man, getting smacked in the face this hard really sets you off in a different way. If you've ever been smacked in the face like this, it strikes a different nerve. Anyways, so she then does a heart symbol with her hands. What a fucking psycho. Literally look at her. She's a dimwit. She's such an idiot. Like, what is wrong with her? How do you go from this to this? What an idiot, bro. So, anyways, I'm gonna sue you for that.
I'm gonna sue your entire family.
What do you get when you combine loud music, alcohol, and women? This mixed, contradictive reaction. You smack him, then you try and shake his hand, then you do a heart symbol with your hands. Again, and this is just like a pure emotional reaction. And this is assault.
You're getting sued for assault. I'm gonna press charges on you. Hey, hold your ear, call the police. Hold your ear, call the police. Hold her.
Now comes the accountability.
Please. Just, hey. Grab her.
Exactly what she gets. Does anyone have a...
Get her.
Wow, she's terrified. Wow, she's terrified. What did you think was going to happen? Again, women don't think about the consequences of their actions. Many times when alcohol is involved, and this is, look, I'll be fair, this is why alcohol is so dangerous. She's probably drunk. I'm not giving her credit by saying, oh, she was drunk, which is why she did it. I'm not trying to give her an excuse, but I'm saying alcohol certainly exacerbated her stupid decision. She's a retard. This is crazy.
Call the police. Call the police. Go get the police, please.
Can I get a picture with you?
Then he takes a picture with Based. Such a W. Gets smacked, doesn't react, gets her arrested, takes a picture. I mean, it's pretty based. But I just thought that was funny. I wanted to react to that. I saw that yesterday. I was like, yo, if I go live tomorrow, I've got to react to that. I could do the whole go hard, red pill thing, but I'm just going to hold back because could get myself in trouble, if you know what I mean. So I'll just hold back for now on that. But eventually you guys will get more of that out of me. Crazy stuff. Anyways, where were we? Oh, this is where we were. We're having a good time. Okay.
I get a lot of press. Mr. President, you said that the war was militarily won in Iran. What did you mean by that? You said the war was
Ooh, good question.
militarily won in Iran. What did you mean by that?
Oh, I think we won. We've knocked out their Navy, their Air Force. We've knocked
As if their Navy and their Air Force were ever the priority.
out their anti-aircraft. We've knocked out everything. We're roaming free from a military.
He's saying this as an F-35 just got nuked out of the sky, by the way. So
When all they're doing is clogging up the strait. But from a military standpoint, they're finished.
So how much longer should the American people expect?
let's just concede to that. Okay, from a military standpoint, they're finished. How about from a strategic one? How about from regime change? Have you done anything to actually cover ground there? The answer is absolutely not. You have not. And what's worse is the son who conceded or who preceded Khamenei is even more religiously extreme than him. And there's a potentiality that he can overturn the fatwa, the religious ruling of no nuclear bombs from what I believe was 2004. So you got a more extreme leader, you've got an angry population, you've got a charged up IRGC, and you've got a foreign minister and a president who are saying, we are waiting for boots on the ground, we're excited for it. By the way, they all want to be martyrs. But we've militarily won, don't worry. Don't worry about the strategic aspect, don't worry about how long this will take, even though foreign minister or the prime minister, I believe, of the UAE has said that it's going to last 9 months, potentially. He's expecting it to last 9 months. Don't worry about the intelligence assets meeting in Florida a few weeks ago saying this could be over 100 days. Don't worry about the fact that the IRGC has already said and stated several times prior that we're going to make sure if this conflict happens, it's going to last all the way up until November. Don't worry about that. Just look at the Truth Social post by Trump. We militarily won. We're all squared away. We're good. Don't worry about any of the intricacies between the lines. Don't read between the lines. Don't look at the writing on the wall. Just believe Trump when he tries to throw shit at the wall and hopes it sticks. Just trust the plan.
Simple military maneuver. Very simple.
Yeah, but what did you mean by that?
It's a simple military maneuver. It's relatively safe, but you need a lot of help in the sense of you need ships, you need volume, and NATO could.
And one thing also to speculate is maybe Trump is trying to get these other NATO nations involved so he doesn't have to deploy these boots on the ground. That's probably what he's waiting on. That's what he's straddling the line about. But you've got to remember, Benjamin Netanyahu wants that regardless. Maybe Trump only wants that if NATO doesn't get involved. The issue is that they both want a different thing, but it seems like Benjamin Netanyahu's favor always wins over the matter. If that hadn't been the case, we would have never even been in Iran from the get-go. So, by the way, Trump is the same president who has weaponized the fact of going against Iran or going to war with Iran to campaign against other presidents. You know, he's condemned this idea forever. Tulsi Gabbard in 2019 during her Democratic debates said Donald Trump is making a huge mistake. We need to pull out of this war. We should not be going to war with Iran. We shouldn't even create any tension with Iran. She was talking about that because Back in 2018, Mike Pompeo, who worked directly alongside Trump, and he was a CIA director, had rendered the IRGC a terrorist organization, which led to the eventual assassination of Qasem Soleimani, who was the head of the Axis of Resistance in 2020. Tulsi Gabbard, who is now the National Director of Intelligence under Donald Trump inside of his cabinet, had condemned this very action in 2019. I'll show you here. See.
To lead our armed forces and.
Give me 1 second. I want to pull this up. Any chats? Oh, I got a chat. Sorry, guys. Yeah, I don't like to let the chats pile up, so I'm always attacking them quickly. Don't worry. Okay. All right, whatever. Dadi712 says, nah, you can't do that. Say it. Yeah, whatever. I said it. Devaster, sorry, I can't see your whole name. $27. Thank you so much. Cooked as bipolar snow bunny. Yeah, facts. Wait, who you talking about? Trump? What? Oh, I'm high. Yeah, the girl with clavicular. Yeah, she's insane, man. Yville, $5. Thank you so much. OSO Mafioso, did you watch Joe Kent Tucker Carlson interview? I recommend to everyone if not. So I didn't watch the whole thing in full. I've only gotten through half of it. Guys, after we finish this war coverage, which we're almost all set with, I want to go over a couple more ground developments and then we'll be all set. One's in the chat if you want to see it. If not, that's fine. I have no issue. But if you want to see the Tucker Carlson's interview with Joe Kent, you want to finish it, let's do one's in the chat for yes, two's in the chat for no. One's in the chat for the Tucker Carlson interview, two's in the chat for no. I went over it already, but I didn't get to watch all of it on stream yesterday. We had to cut short because Discord was down. I wasn't able to jump on with my brother. But if you guys want to see it, let me know. One's for yes, two's for no. And I don't care if it's two, right? If it's no, let me know. Be honest. And while you're doing that, I'll pull this up. All right, we got a bunch of people spamming. Few twos in there. We'll take a stab at it. We'll peek at it. We'll give some commentary. Okay. The people have spoken. I got it. Somebody said 0. All right. One moment while I pull this up so you can see how this whole cabinet is backwards.
President Trump, your Iran strategy has been ill-advised and very short-sighted.
True.
You need to change course now and get back into the Iran nuclear agreement before it's too late.
So true. So true. She's so based here. I agree.
Set aside your pride. Set aside your political calculations for the good of our country. Just do the right thing.
Yeah. Could you believe? I believe this is in 2019. 7 years later, she's getting grilled for the same war. Crazy. Crazy how the tables turn, huh? If you didn't see that, here's a small clip.
Did you brief the president, if he starts a war of choice, that the likely result would be that Iran would strike adjacent Gulf nations and close the Strait of Hormuz? Did you brief him on those two facts that I think have been consistently the assumptions of the intelligence community?
I have not and won't divulge internal conversations. I will say that those of us within the intelligence community continue to provide the president with all of the best objective intelligence available to inform his decisions.
Was it the assessment of the intelligence community that there was a, quote, imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime, yes or no?
Senator, the only person who can determine what is and is not an imminent threat is the president.
False. This is the worldwide threats hearing where you present to Congress national intelligence timely, objective, and independent of political considerations? Was it the assessment of the intelligence community that, as the White House claimed on March 1st, there was a, quote, imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime? Yes or no?
Once again, Senator, the intelligence community has provided the inputs that make up this annual threat assessment.
You won't answer the question.
It is the nature of the imminent threat that the president has to make that determination based on a collection and volume
You're here
of
to be
information and
timely.
intelligence that he is provided with.
You're here to be timely, objective, and independent of political considerations.
Exactly what I'm doing.
No, you're evading a question because to provide a candid response to the committee would contradict a statement from the White House.
Very true. Take a look at this. So this is Southern Lebanon, 10 minutes ago, posted on X by Mario. Homes are in flames. Unbelievable, man. Unbelievable. Iran said this would be a regional war, and no one wanted to listen. So let's see if there's any updates on the ground currently. So this reads, Iranian missile and drone attacks against Kuwait, likely targeting U.S. bases or oil infrastructure. That's 30 minutes ago. Again, 29 minutes ago, the IDF is striking Iranian terror regime targets in Tehran. That's per the IDF. Airstrikes are reported in Tehran, the capital of Iran, following this statement. And then that's kind of it for what we have right now since we've started the stream. And yeah, Brent crude oil is still at $112. WTI is around 98. So that's where we currently are. Okay. All right, we'll pull up Joe Kent and Tucker Carlson. We'll watch it. It was a long interview, man. And I'll be honest, like, I was watching it, but just because, like, I already know what it's going to be about for the most part. You know, I know what they're going to talk about. Not saying like, oh, I know what they're talking, I don't want to watch it. I know it comes off that way. But I just already know where that conversation's kind of headed, which is why I didn't finish it. But I wanted to react to it live on stream, so I kind of saved it. So we'll take a look. I'm an hour and 4 minutes into it, so don't worry. I'm not all the way at the beginning. We can start from here and see what was said. I know he spoke about Charlie Kirk. Chat, does anybody have that timestamp? Because he said something really weird about Charlie Kirk that I wanted to kind of dig into, but I don't know. If anyone has that timestamp, let me know. Oh, hour 27. All right. Thank you so much, Sogno Sprite. Hour 27. We'll jump there and start from there.
I wasn't particularly close with Charlie. He was very gracious to me when I was running for Congress, very, very supportive. So we knew each other. And the last time I saw Charlie Kirk on this earth was in June in the West Wing, in the stairway. And I said hi to him, and he looked me in the eye, and he said very loudly, and it's a small, you've been in the West Wing, it's small, it's a tight space. And he said, Joe, stop us from getting into a war with Iran. Very loudly.
He was single-minded.
And he walked off, and he went, I believe, into the Oval. So when one of President Trump's closest advisors who is vocally advocating for us to not go to war with Iran and for us to rethink at least our relationship with the Israelis. And then he's suddenly publicly assassinated, and we're not allowed to ask any questions about that. It's a data point. It's a data point that we need to look into.
What do you mean when you say we're not allowed to ask any questions about that?
We've been told that this individual, Robinson, is a lone gunman, and maybe he is. But the investigation that I was a part of, the National Counterterrorism Center was a part of, we were stopped from continuing to investigate. And the FBI will say that they stopped that because they wanted to have turn everything over to the Utah state authorities. Everything's going to trial. It's very, very sensitive. But there was still a lot for us to look into that I can't really get into. But there was still linkage for us to investigate that we needed to run down. And I'm not making any conclusions. I'm not saying
no, I don't think you are.
Because of this happened. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying there's unanswered questions. We know the pressure because of the text messages that have been made public that Charlie was under a lot of pressure from a lot of pro-Israel donors. And again, we know Charlie was advocating to President Trump against this war. with Iran. And we knew at the end of the 12-day war, at the end of Midnight Hammer, that the Israelis were going to come back and ask us to go back to war again.
Right.
So we have a lot of data points between Butler, the assassination attempts against President Trump, the breaches of his security, what happened to Charlie Kirk.
Can I just ask you to pause on the Charlie Kirk because it upsets me to
me too.
hear what you're saying, to be reminded that he was murdered.
So, all right, a lot to unpack here, but let's just shoot it straight. I'm not even going to do the whole word salad thing like he just did. He is suggesting that there could have been foreign interference in the assassination of of Charlie Kirk. That's exactly what he's suggesting. Because he's saying that he was stopped from investigating any sort of foreign tie to said assassination. And obviously, the mainstream conspiracy narrative in regards to the assassination of Charlie Kirk was that, obviously, you know who had did the doing. So, I mean, I don't think I'm jumping the gun. That's what he's kind of trying to indirectly imply in a very conspicuous way, in a very shadow-worded way. And I know that the FBI has now begun to get on his case after his resignation, which is expected because Donald Trump kind of targets anybody who undermines his presidency or turns their back on him, even for a good reason, that being the reason of going to war with Iran. That was Joe Kent's motivation, which is a moral motivation and a good one. But in regards to the whole Charlie Kirk situation, you got to expand on that. But then again, this guy is former CIA. This guy is former military intelligence. He probably knows all the ins and outs of every single conspiracy that we know about and talk about today. So I'm sure he's not allowed to disclose further information. I'm surprised he was even able to say that. Very surprised he was able to even say that, to be honest with you. So, I don't know. That's weird. Let's see. Tucker will probably dig deeper. I saw a clip, but I didn't know he said all that. That's crazy.
But also to hear you confirm what was reported in the media several months ago, that your office had been blocked from investigating his murder. That does not make sense to me. I don't understand why you would ever turn down help in an investigation from a U.S. agency with a lot of experience in gathering intelligence on things. That's your job.
The FBI will say, and the DOJ will say, that because it's an ongoing case, it's a Utah State case, that back off, they've got it. They've got a smoking case. They've got the fingerprints on the gun, and they've got the kit.
But the FBI was involved in the case.
The FBI was involved. The FBI's basically said that they're deferring to Utah because it's now a state case.
But they've established a precedent for federal investigation of this crime.
Yeah, and the National Counterterrorism Center's mandate is to investigate any foreign ties, to see if there's potentially any foreign ties. If we don't find any foreign ties, we back off. What I'm saying, without getting into too much detail, is there was more for us to investigate.
There was.
All right. Well, then that's crazy. How is that not like the biggest takeaway of this entire interview? Because we know why Joe Kent resigned. We understand his position under Tulsi Gabbard. We understand what he was doing as a director, or the director of counterterrorism. This is like the biggest thing, I think, to come out of this article. Or sorry, out of this video.
What I'm saying, without getting into too much detail, is there was more for us to investigate.
There was.
He's really got to expand on that. You can't just say that. You can't just say that. You got to tell us what you're talking about. Because to me, it seems like he's already gone too far. To me, it seems like he's already kind of given us the hint. Very, very weird.
You believe there was reason to investigate foreign ties to Charlie Kirk's murder and were told by the FBI, DOJ?
FBI and DOJ, yeah.
No, you're not allowed to investigate that.
Stop. It's done. They basically cut off our access to.
It could be standard protocol, but the reason why it's sus is because this is Charlie Kirk. He's a high-profile political person. High-profile political assassination. Is that normal? Does that usually happen? I don't know. I don't have the knowledge to know if that's standard protocol. The only person who would know if that's standard protocol is Joe Kent.
be able to get into that information. And look, I didn't even say necessarily that I believe there's 100% foreign ties. There were data points that we needed to investigate. I mean, I think anybody who's even, looked at any kind of police investigation, you get 100 leads, you run them down, and 99 don't mean anything. We still had a lot more leads to run down that pertained to some kind of a foreign nexus that we were stopped from investigating. And,
that just strikes me as inconceivable that could happen. And again, I was aware of it from reading about it, but not really to the extent that you've just described. So I would love to hear the justification for that. And can you flesh that out a little bit more? What were you told was the reason to prevent you as a federal intelligence official running the National Counterterrorism Center from looking into the murder when you had reason to look into it?
Well, the way the bureaucracy works is they can just kill things in process. So initially we were cut off pretty early on from being able to access like the files and being able to, send people out there. We sent people out initially to work in the task force. After the crisis period, the first week or so, that dispersed, and we basically were told that, hey, we'll get back to you if we find any kind of foreign ties, et cetera, that we want you guys to look into. Meanwhile, we had already dug up a decent amount of leads. Again, I'm not saying that we had anything concrete.
And guys, the reason why, I'm sure it's evident, but just in case there's some sort of gap in anybody's understanding, the reason why this is groundbreaking is because Charlie Kirk was very vocal that he was anti-war against Iran. Absolutely not for a war against Iran. And he actually predicted this war perfectly. He said it would be a regional mess, and he would be for Israel. This is
Make sure
actually
we don't go
a couple clips here. So
go to war against Iran, which would be a profound mistake for our country. So that's a really, really important thing. Make sure we don't go to war against Iran, which would be a profound mistake for our country. So that's a really, really important thing. Drill, baby, drill domestically. Peace in the Middle East, peace with Russia, Ukraine. You'll see gas prices go down to $30 a barrel. Charlie, what does that mean? $1.75 a gallon. That's what it means, okay? Make sure we don't go to war against Iran, which would...
Here's another one.
This is Israel's war.
Yeah, the worst possible case scenario is Iran says, okay, you humiliated us, you killed all of our leaders. We're going to go make this a regional mess and try to get as many people involved as possible. They're going to go...
God damn. He was on the money.
After Americans, they're going to go after Saudis, they're going to go after everybody imaginable, just to create a big mess and to try to draw the world into it.
Exactly what they've done. They hit the entire GCC. They've hit all of the U.S. bases. They've hit critical infrastructure in terms of oil refineries in these Gulf countries, as well as blockade or cause a disruption in the Strait of Hormuz, which is easier for them to do than it is for the United States to secure and reopen that passageway.
I can say concretely, here's where I stand. We do not want U.S. boots on the ground. We do not want American kinetic involvement. This is Israel's war. This is Israel's war.
Oh, a bit bone-chilling to say the least. Look, people are going to ask me what my take is on his assassination. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't like to conspiracize. I don't like to, you know what I mean? Like, I don't like to get into all that unless I have some sort of smoking gun evidence, which when there is Israeli involvement in any sort of high-profile assassination or, the Mossad with Jundullah in 2004, where they used American passports and met in Morocco with these fighters, Jundullah, these terrorists, and they got them to do things in Iran and then blame the United States. Like, see, that's smoking gun evidence. That's legitimate declassified information. That's public info. But, with his assassination, it's so fresh and there's so many moving pieces. But, Joe Kent is indirectly pointing in the direction that most people are trying to conclude from, which is that who had to do with that tragic event back in September. That being Charlie Kirk. So I don't know. That is, I just wish he would kind of finish what his sentiment is. I wish he would expand. I wish he would conclude what he's trying to say here. I didn't know he dragged it on for this long, and I don't know how he's even able to talk about this. And look, it might be standard protocol that where he works gets cut off very quickly in terms of a high political or high profile political assassination. Him working in the Center for Counterterrorism, maybe it's standard protocol that the FBI takes charge and then they give it to the state I don't know. You know, I'm not somebody who studies these kinds of cases. My brother would be more qualified to speak on an issue pertaining to this one or likened to this one. So it could be standard protocol, and maybe he's blowing it out of proportion for clicks and views, or on the contrary, he's saying exactly what we all kind of see him to be saying, or take what he's saying is he was stopped because he was going to uncover something that would have caused a larger issue than the United States could clean up for. So very interesting. Let's see what else he has to say. I know I cut off, but I wanted to give you guys some context because Charlie Kirk, if you look at his clips in regards to his prediction on the Iran war and his take and his opinion, he was vehemently against it, as well as the fact that he accurately predicted what would unfold following the United States striking Iran, which is a regional mess, exactly what they've done with the Strait of Hormuz and all the other Gulf countries around them. So, you know, it is creepy. Daddy712 says, mispronouncing my name, smart. I'll get you again, brother. Do you believe there's no eschatological reasoning? If not, what do you personally think is the reason? No, I do think there's an element of eschatology to the conflict that we're currently seeing. I think there's an element. I don't think it's complete eschatology. I don't think it's some prophecy from Islam or Christianity being fulfilled just yet. But it's a step in that direction, certainly. There is a spiritual aspect to this war, no doubt. No doubt. Igor Tigor says, creepiest thing is bodyguard smiling over Kirk. Yeah, thanks for the super chat. You know, I don't really... There's a lot of brain rot, silly conspiracies that came about after his assassination that I never entertained, you know, but this interview with Joe Kent is, you know, he's kind of saying some groundbreaking things, to say the least.
But we found more work that we needed to do to say that we had done our due diligence. We were then told that, hey, you guys need to stop. You can't work on this anymore. I had a bureaucratic dispute about it. Eventually, we were allowed to continue to investigate. But then in very short order, all the requests that we would make that normally different parts of the interagency.
Shout out to my clipper. He just chatted in. Halimi, this is your aid money. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it, bro.
The FBI being on point would facilitate data share. Data sharing is a big thing that NCTC does. Those requests were just never met, or in my opinion, not an honest effort was given to fulfill those requests. Just basic information that any competent police service, which I believe Utah has, and the FBI, that they would have access to help us run down the leads to either confirm or deny some kind of foreign activity. So we were cut off from that. They didn't ever officially come back and say, you can't look at this anymore. All of the requests just continued to die on the vine with the various agencies that we needed to actually fulfill those requests.
I just can't imagine a legitimate justification for that. I mean, maybe I'm missing something, but from a non-specialist perspective, something horrible has happened. The U.S. government, its core function is to investigate crime, particularly murder. Here you have an agency whose job it is to run down the rabbit trails you've described, and you're stopped from doing that. We don't want the information.
Right.
Why would any person engaged in a legitimate pursuit say, I don't want more information?
I mean, especially considering there was people posting online prior knowledge of what was about to happen. So a lot of the justification for stopping us from investigating hung on, hey, we've got the guy, his fingerprints are on the gun. We got video of him jumping off the roof. Like, this is a slam dunk case. Okay, even if it is a slam dunk case that he took the shot, what about all the people who had prior knowledge? You know, all this, the basic investigative questions of like, how did he get there? You map it out. You know, nothing. This isn't rocket.
Yeah, it's good questions. You know, you got to get to the bottom of it.
Rocket science. I mean, this is anything that.
Daddy712 says, damn autocorrect, eschatological meaning, and what do you think is the reason this war is going on that obviously doesn't benefit anyone? Well, it's for Israel. The war is for Israel. It's to benefit them, no one else. And from an eschatology standpoint, I kind of have to be vague in my explanation because of the platform that we're on, but, you know, that very country has a plan of expanding their borders and bringing about their chosen one. That's like his I just have to be careful, you know, they want to bring about their Messiah. So one critical step is having hegemony over the region, something that Iran is in the way of. Okay, thank you for the super chat, by the way. All right, let's look at, I got a couple clips here from Professor Zhang and Tucker Carlson. This is put behind a paywall, so I hope I don't get slammed. But it's on X, so we should be good. So let's see what he's saying in regards to the Strait of Hormuz.
The good news for Iran is that it seems as though they will be able to maintain control over the Strait of Hormuz. And that is critical because now they're able to charge a toll on anyone who uses the Strait of Hormuz. And they talk about 10%, which should generate about $800 billion a year annually for Iran. So the nation will be destroyed in this war. But if it's able to harness the pride of the Persian people, if it's able to unify the Persian people, and it's able to leverage the resource of the Strait of Hormuz effectively, then we can expect Iran to rise again in like 10 to 20 years' time.
Where is Israel in a few years from now?
So if you look at the main beneficiary...
No, don't stop there. It was just getting good. Maybe
I don't think we can ever overestimate the influence of eschatology in American politics.
Oh, okay. So, well, just for your super chat, here he'll comment on it. But he's right. Yeah, the Strait of Hormuz is very beneficial from a strategic perspective for Iran. So
I'll give an example where about a quarter of Americans are evangelicals, and a lot of them are Christian Zionists. So they believe.
Yeah, that's true. Evangelical Christians, but they're dying in population. I'm noticing personally that the kind of Christian Zio ideology is losing steam quickly.
That Israel is crucial, the linchpin to achieving God's plan and the return of Jesus. And so a very prominent figure that you probably know very well is John Hagee, who runs something called the Christians United for Israel. It's 7 million members. And these are the people who are financing a lot of the conflict in the Middle East.
So Christian Zionists or evangelicals get their readings from the Old Testament. Really, the whole idea of Christ coming back is prophetically dependent on the Old Testament and Israel achieving their goal of the greater Holy Land, having hegemony over the region, achieving their greater Israel project, as well as bringing about their Messiah. At least from an Islamic perspective, that's what we believe. Jesus Christ doesn't return until the Antichrist returns. So, you know, in regards to evangelicals, that's true.
In Israel, because they're the ones who are funding West Bank settlements. And so Christian Zionism, it is an extremely powerful political force in America. So your question is, how did this happen? And
yes,
the issue is that this is a plan that has been in motion for centuries, and it's a very complicated history. But it involves different religious groups among the Jews, Sephardim Frankists, Shabbat Lubavitch, which you've talked about. But also it involves the Freemasons, the Knights Templars, the Rosicrucians. It involves the Jesuits.
I would respectfully disagree.
We have these different secret societies, different religious organizations working together for the centuries to achieve this plan for the end of the world.
Yeah, it's just tough for me to really give my honest take on this on YouTube, but that's just not. He's kind of overcomplicating something that's a little bit more simple than that.
Which heralds the Messianic age, okay? And there are different components of this plan, but
some of these groups do exist, right? Like Freemasons and others, but kind of in regards to, you know, all of their influence on Christian Zionism, it doesn't actually get that. It's not complex like that.
But the basic components are, one is the creation of the nation state of Israel, which happened in 1948. And then you need to have the building of the third temple, which requires the destruction of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is actually, which could happen during this war, given what we've seen so far. So
yeah, potentially.
The Israelis have closed off the Al-Aqsa Mosque.
I spoke about this in the video that I dropped the other day called Red Heifer. So if you want to get more on that, you can check out that video.
As well as other religious sites like the Church of Holy Sepulchre to tourists these past few days. There's rumors that for the past 2 years, the Israelis have been conducting these archaeological digs under the Al-Aqsa Mosque to basically destroy the foundations of the mosque so that they can conduct a controlled demolition of the mosque and blame it on a missile strike from the Iranians. And there's actually talk among the Israelis of using this plan to ignite a war between the Arabs and...
By the way, so we're seeing the United States is going to allow Iran to get $14 billion in oil revenue. So we lifted the sanctions to kind of relieve some pressure from the rising oil prices because of their blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, which is what I think is going to be responded to by the Marine Expeditionary Units that were released earlier today out of California, being the 2,500 Marines and the 3 naval ships, one of them being the USS Tripoli.
The Persians. So the Al-Aqsa Mosque needs to be destroyed for the Third Temple. They also talk about this war of Gog and Magog between Israel and the entire world. Then the coming of the Jewish Messiah, the creation of the Greater Israel Project, the return of all Jews from the diaspora. So there are different components to this plan. If you just observe geopolitical events, we're seeing these events converge together today. I mean, all these events are playing out. So it seems as though there are these very powerful shadow forces working behind the scenes. We don't know who they are, but it seems as though they're able to...
Yeah, I mean, he's right, but he's kind of wrong too. And again, I just have to be so careful with this topic. So many of you probably know what I'm thinking, but I just, whatever. Anyways, let's read this. Treasury Secretary Bessent says the United States will use Iranian barrels against Tehran by releasing 140 million barrels of sanctioned Iranian crude onto global markets to bring prices down. He claims 440 million total barrels are being mobilized to undercut Iran's Hormuz leverage. The framing is creative, but the reality is absurd. The United States is bombing Iran while simultaneously unlocking Iran's own oil sales to stabilize the energy market that the bombing had broke. You can kind of see how we're not gaining any ground here. Bessent says Iran will have difficulty accessing any revenue generated, maybe, but 140 million barrels at $112 a barrel is over $15 billion worth of oil hitting the market with Tehran's name on it. China has spent years building shadow networks of front companies and informal banking channels to move Iranian oil money outside of the Western financial system. Those pipelines don't disappear because Washington issued a 30-day license. So, yeah, I mean, look, people are going to say that this can be used against China, again, for a fleeting gain. That all depends on where this war goes. That depends on what moves we're going to make for our ultimate goal, which is regime change. That is a moving piece. That's a part of the conflict, but ultimately it could still help Iran, and China will find some way to exploit it in their benefit anyways, as they've always done. They've been supplying the missiles, which have been hitting our carriers, by the way, and nullifying some of their offensive abilities. The CM-302 missiles that they supplied about 2 weeks before the conflict had actually started. I'm sure they'll see a way around this as well. As on top of that, what's more, they've been receiving some oil from Russia because we've lifted sanctions on them as well temporarily due to the fact that the shortage has been felt. The supply is low, the demand is high, prices are skyrocketing, and they've hit critical levels. Anything above 120 or more is something that will really be felt on a global scale, which we can see right now. I have people telling me in my chat that their gas is up $20, $30 in terms of filling a full tank. Gas is up a whole $1 or, $1 per gallon, whatever. So it's been a catastrophic shockwave effect. Okay. We'll wrap up in a moment here. How long have we been going? Like 2 hours? Like 2 hours. If you guys got anything you want me to react to, just send in a chat and I'll pull it up really quick. But that's kind of all I wanted to go over in regards to the Marines and everything else. And Fresh and Fit is about to go live in a moment anyways. Okay. Set up an account so YouTube doesn't take... Yeah, we'll work on it. Sogno Sprite, full video on Tucker's channel under videos. Is it? Okay. Is it under Tucker's channel? Thank you. You've been helping me a lot tonight. Let's see. Tucker Carlson. I don't have an issue with Professor Zhang, but I'm not sure about that whole multifaceted shadowy cult thing that's causing, this idea of Christian Zionism. Okay, yeah, he did have a full interview with him. I could react to this tomorrow. Me and my brother can maybe react to this tomorrow. Wow, they went into like a lot of this. Okay. Okay, Ivan Leo, Crisis King. Okay, thank you for the super chat. Half 3 AD reads. Oh, thank you so much for the huge super chat, man. $100. Shout out to you. God bless you, my friend. I appreciate it. As former U.S. Army 82nd 11B, an ex-Army Ranger and ex-Army SF warrant officer who goes counter intel branch of federal government saying Israel is a problem. Everything is worse than even high IQ chatters think. Even if I knew southern Iraq and the OIF surge in 2007 was Cold War with Iran. Hey, man, thank you so much, man. I appreciate the love and support. I hope that I'm able to push out the correct message in order to rectify your affairs and others who have done similar things to you. Thank you for your service. God bless you. And I really appreciate the huge super chat, man. Let's see. Big ups to you, man. Thank you for your service. Jalen O Slice Gaming says, $10 of gas for my Civic does nothing anymore. Thanks, Trump. Yeah. Yeah, all you guys with your economy cars, you're cooked now, aren't you? Cooked now, aren't you? Shout out to Half 3 AD. W's in the chat. W's in the chat for him, man. Spam W's in the chat. God bless him. We love our service members. We love our veterans. Yeah, if you have something you want me to react to, just super chat it in. And literally, you can super chat it for $1. I'll quickly react to it. And then we'll wrap up. Let's see. In the meantime, I can play around with this Professor Zhang video. But yeah, that's where we are. Hopefully, I covered everything. Hopefully, that was a good breakdown for you guys. But we'll see what happens with these Marine troops that are being deployed over to what will eventually be the Strait of Hormuz. They're still on the way. Even the first deployment is still on the way, the first batch. And it'll be interesting to see what develops over these next few days. I hope, look, I'd love to believe that Trump is being honest when he says that we're done with our attack on Iran. That's pretty much what he said on Truth Social. But again, pulling out right now doesn't seem feasible from the side of the Iranians nor the side of the Americans for two major reasons. One, on our end, why would we pull out right now if we haven't achieved the goal that Netanyahu has so desperately wanted for several years, since the 90s, which was to effectuate regime change in Iran, the head of the axis of resistance? And why would Trump pull out if he know it would make him look like a big fat loser right now? Because that's what it would do. And on the side of the Iranians, why would they stop fighting? They're the ones who've been attacked. They're causing a regional mess. They're kind of keeping the world at bay. No one else wants to get involved. NATO countries and NATO partners are not guaranteeing involvement. Matter of fact, they've been saying the opposite. So Iran knows their only fight is with Israel and the United States, as well as the fact that they want sanctions lifted. This is ultimately going to be the biggest thing that's going to drive their government and their country forward to propel themselves into stabilization and have some sort of foundation. And for that, the United States has to come to the table with reasonable diplomacy, guaranteeing they would lift sanctions, as well as a security guarantee that they would never attack them again, something Donald Trump can absolutely not do, or he would never do. And I'd love to be wrong on that, but I highly doubt that's feasible. So that's where we kind of are. Let's hope that things get better. I don't want this war to continue on. I've been right in all my predictions, and my predictions are usually the worst case scenario, but I only ever predict the worst case scenario because Trump has done nothing except make it evident that that's his motive. That's what he did with the JCPOA and sabotaging it in 2018. That's what he did with Mike Pompeo. That's what Mike Pompeo had tweeted. He said that Mossad agents are alongside the protesters in Iran, meaning we exacerbated the issue and we try to launch a coup d'etat and do regime change inside of Iran without direct military involvement, something that did not work, which has now graduated us to what we're seeing unfold on the global stage, which is every single country not willing to get involved and us having to do this kind of gaslighting game on Truth Social, really Donald Trump saying NATO are paper tigers and NATO is a bunch of wussies that don't want to do Israeli and American bidding. I mean, look where we've come. Look how far we've come. So, remarkable to say the least. Okay. Let's see. We can react to a little bit of Professor Zhang. I want to see what he's going to say about the future of GCC and Iran. So let's take a look. And then for the record, like, I'm not trying to do this IQ superiority thing. I just disagree with like that narrative that there's like these shadowy groups that are culminated to, you know, undermine Christians and fool them in regards to Zionism. The matter is clear, you know what I mean, as to why Zionism has plagued the United States in mainstream evangelical Christianity as well as Protestantism. The motives are clear. The matter is clear. The evidence is clear, you know. Because for me to substantiate that, the way he's framing it is a lot safer than the way I would frame it. Put it that way.
What about the GCC? What does that look like in 5 years?
Right. So, unfortunately, the biggest loser of this war, regardless of how it turns out, okay, even if Americans were to win, the biggest loser is the GCC. Because for the past 30, 40 years, the GCC is basically built on a mirage, because it's essentially a desert with very little access to fresh water. And
very true. Very true. It's their oil and their tourism that keeps them up. And the oil is not able to get through the Strait of Hormuz, and the tourism isn't going to happen if missiles are flying over people's heads. So very true.
And very little agriculture. And so it couldn't really sustain a large population. But with the petrodollar and with American military protection, then the GCC nations felt free to invest in technology that allowed them to grow their population, right? So these desalination plants, modern infrastructure. So you sort of saw this massive growth in Dubai, in Qatar, in Riyadh. And what this war has done is shattered this mirage and revealed the limitations of the GCC. So, for example, look at Dubai. So Dubai...
Yeah. And anybody he's completely right. On a global stage, that's what it did. But anybody who's politically literate knew that these Gulf countries don't have any sort of threatening capability from a military standpoint. Besides the fact that they can say the United States is our best buddy, in which they've over-prioritized Israel over their defense anyways. So that didn't work out for them either. They feel pretty stupid right now.
For many years has prided itself as this safe...
Sagno Sprite says, Taylor Frankie Paul DV video on TMZ. I'll be honest, I don't know who those people are. So maybe not. Ivan Leal says, what happens if the Houthis close Bab el-Mandeb? Good question. Good question. More crisis. Privacy Project. Diesel has just doubled about now. Logistics industries are already raising costs of building materials, etc. The world is going to be cooked soon, as long as this war continues. Desert Joe, $5. By the way, Sagno Sprite, thank you for the super chat, but I don't know who those people are. Two things. Any interest in jumping on Suleiman's space? And maybe I can jump on for a moment. And then when are we going to see you live down in the Miami studio? I don't know. All right, guys, I'll just be honest with you here. I still have a job. You can kind of connect that. Now, let me sit up here. I'm being a lazy prick. I still have a job. So, you know what I mean? I've got to be careful. You kind of get it. I got to be careful. And then the space, I don't know if we have time. I'll finish up this segment with Professor Zhang. We'll see what he has to say. And then we'll close out in a moment. But, yeah. Let's get it back up. Sorry.
Very cosmopolitan, very open tax haven. So a lot of wealthy people immigrated to Dubai. But because of this war, and we're talking about like a few drones hitting hotels, it's really shattered the image of Dubai. And once you shatter this mirage, you can never, ever rebuild it again.
Sagno Sprite, thank you so much. Myron reacted to it last night. It's a Bachelorette. The season got canceled because of that video. Something different than politics, but just wanted to throw. No, I appreciate it. I have no idea. I don't know how I'd even react to it because I don't know what's going on. Is it a fight or something? 3 Diglett says, quit your job, get out while you can. Hey man, yeah, it's I don't mind it. I don't mind the job too much, but just to say the least, YouTube has not become full-time for me yet. But we're working at it. You know, it's like tough. I got to straddle the line and like play careful for optics. Make sure I don't say anything stupid. You know what I'm saying?
So the idea of Dubai as like the future New York or London, the financial capital of the GCC, this mirage has evaporated.
Iran in 5 years?
So Iran is being devastated right now.
In 5 years, as long as the United States doesn't pull out like Trump is claiming, they won't exist.
So the Israelis,
or it will be a fractured nation like Syria, maybe.
In America,
previously was.
Americans are attacking critical infrastructure. So the Israelis attacked the largest gas field in Iran. The desalination plant was destroyed. But we also have to remember what is being hidden from us. And what's being hidden from us is the fact that the Israelis and Americans are trying to destroy the capacity of the state to govern the nation, basically destroy the state's monopoly on violence. And so what we're hearing are attacks on police officers, on military installations, and there's talk of special forces going.
They just executed a wrestler, by the way, some like world-renowned or really famous wrestler in Iran. But allegedly, what I'm seeing, it's unconfirmed that he had fought or killed 2 police officers, something like that. You know, and you just don't know what to trust that comes out of the news, especially when it's in regards to human rights in Iran, because that stuff can be weaponized very easily for the GOP to continue their bidding, as well as Israel. So you got to take that stuff with a grain of salt. But no doubt the IRGC is a psycho-religious regime.
Going into Iran and starting to fund dissident groups, right? Like the Kurds and the Palakis in southeast Iran. So no matter what happens in this war, it's going to be very hard for the government to maintain national control, even if they were to survive this war. And also another huge issue for Iran is that for the past few years, it suffered drought issues. So its agriculture was heavily impacted. They were actually talking about moving Tehran, like moving these millions of people out of the city of Tehran because the capital can no longer sustain this large population. So this war will only exacerbate these environmental issues, especially with the attacks on critical civilian infrastructure, for example, dams, reservoirs.
Okay, so let's quickly see. I kind of went over all this already. Let's quickly see this. Wait, this is crazy. Okay, so wild. So what's the lore there? You see, because I don't even know what the hell. I don't even know why they're fighting. What's the lore? That's hilarious. Anyways, I had one more chat come in. She lunged the chair at him. Did you see that? That was crazy. And that's something girls do a lot, bro. When police officers respond to these domestic calls, don't be fooled. A lot of the times it's the girl that's doing the hitting, man. Girls can beat up guys too. And it's kind of a lose-lose for a guy, because if you fight back, then you're really cooked. If a girl punches you 4 or 5 times, you may not even mark up because it's a girl. You hit her back once, knock her teeth out, now you're really cooked. You know what I mean? So, but that would never happen to me, just for the record. I got to be a tough guy here. I know I have to say that, but that would never get that far. He let that get way too far. Anyways, the Agent Hub says, it was smart on him for recording though. Can I drop IG link in chat to react to? Yeah, you could send it really quick while we finish this up, and then we'll close out. Baby got hit with the chair like Mick Foley. The 3 Diglets, thanks for the $10. That was crazy. Yeah, in these situations, like in these domestic violence situations, what you find is actually the girls usually start it. I think that's what the numbers say. I'm not too sure, but even then, more often than not, people always think domestic violence. I think the guy is the one who's the perpetrator, who's the one starting the incident or the one starting the physical assault or violence. But a lot of the times the girls provoke them physically to what warrants a lopsided response, you know, that being the fact that a man is far stronger than a woman physically. And so he responds in a way that she's already attacking him with. His hits, whatever damage that he blows or deals to the female will be very apparent upon her body, whether that's bruises, marks. But you got to record these kinds of situations, man. And that's why I'm of the opinion, living with a girl is an L. I don't know if they live together. I don't know the lore there, but like this is a typical situation where a guy and a girl live together. If you're not, and maybe some people will get mad at me for this. This is a little bit controversial, and I'm 24. And so what do I know, right? And I'm not at the age where most people get married in the United States. I think the average age of marriage is somewhere closer to 30. But, you know, I don't think that a man should live with a girl if they're dating. I think that that's an L. I think as a young man, you really should be focused on yourself. Having a girlfriend is typically a net negative unless you really plan on marrying her. But let's be honest, how many guys are really going to marry their so-called girlfriend at this age? Especially if it's your first or your second, the chances are low. And I get it. Lust is a thing. You have feelings for somebody. I understand that sentiment. Don't think I don't. I'm not insensitive to it. But you've got to exercise some discipline and fight back against your desires as a man. And sometimes that means not allowing a girl that you like to live with you. Being in a relationship is one thing, which I'm also like a little bit against. If you're a younger man, you should focus on yourself. But living with the girl is a whole different problem that can exacerbate an existing issue way farther than it ever needed to go had you not lived with her in the first place. And honestly, from the ages of 18 all the way up until like 27, 28, I don't really think a man should be in some full-time, long-term relationship with a girl, especially living with her, because these are key critical years in where you should be building up your own personal infrastructure. You should be building up not only your body, but your mind, your finances. You should be building good habits. You should be learning about life, all things that are very difficult to go about when there's a girl who you have to tend to. That's going to take up a lot of your time. She's going to want to hang out. She's going to want to spend time. She's going to want to do things you don't want to do. You know? Maybe you don't always want to go bowling on a Tuesday. Maybe you don't always want to go to dinner every single Friday or Saturday. But if you let 2 weekends go without doing something with your significant other, if you're a guy, well, a lot of you can probably attest to this and agree with me. Your backlash will be felt, you know? And at an age where you're supposed to be building yourself, and really, honestly, I'll go as far as to even say, as a young man, you should be selfish. You really should not be indulging in some sort of relationship. You know, it's one thing if you're a guy running around talking to different women, which also is a time-wasting kind of objective that it doesn't get you far. And it usually is a cruising for a bruising, to be honest with you, because you're going to end up catching feelings for some girl. But that's one thing. But to be in a full-fledged relationship as a young man, what's the rush? You know, you'll eventually be 28, 29. You're not going to drop off in looks like a girl does. And girls kind of physically peak a lot earlier than men. Men can maintain their looks. They can maintain their assets. Tough thing is your hair. You might have to get a hair transplant or get on that dutasteride or finasteride and minoxidil. But in regards to the age gap between a man, I think the ideal age gap, and maybe this is because I'm Arab and I'm Islamic, but you should be significantly older than a girl. Maybe you're 31, she's like 25, 24. I think that's ideal because that's the stage where the girl is at her peak physically. The girl has not had too much experience, at least, hopefully, if she's been good to herself and she hasn't gone to college or university and lived on campus, because God knows what happened in those 4 years while she was dorming. And the guy at that point is financially developed. He's mentally developed. You know, it takes a long time for men to really establish themselves. And I know I'm saying this as a 24-year-old, and so people would say, take your own advice, but I am. That's why I'm single. And having a girlfriend at this age is always going to be a net negative. I know this from personal experience because I see my friends all the time deal with their girlfriends, and they always end up crashing and burning. You know, it's high stress. Girls definitely expect a lot more than a young man can provide. And girls will say, all I want is quality time, but quality time is to be used elsewhere. You need that time for yourself, you know? So I don't mean to go into this whole red pill rage rant kind of thing, but, you know, these are one of the downfalls of potentially living with a girl. You have a situation like this because, look, you live with somebody, you're going to clash heads. Eventually, it's going to get to the point where you're sick of seeing that person. You wake up next to them every day. You smell their shitty breath in the morning. You're cooking next to them. You're cooking for them. They're cooking for you. You're cleaning up after them. They're cleaning up after you. And people say, well, that's what love is all about. That's the point. Yeah, that's what marriage is about. In regards to having a girlfriend who you're not even sure you want to marry, by the way, because a lot of guys would say, I'm not sure if I want to marry my girlfriend. Why the hell are you putting up with that? Where is the return on investment for you? Is she going to bear your children? If you can't guarantee that, why is it worth it for you to share space with her that will eventually irritate you? You know, marriage is not just love. Marriage is a relationship that two people have to be willing to want to make work. You know, you're not always going to feel this lusty, fuzzy, warm feeling for your significant other. And so you should save that for marriage because at least you guys have the greater good of sharing one promise under God to procreate and serve God. You know? Nuclear family, the whole TradCon ideology, that's worth the sacrifice. But to just be in a relationship for the sense of fulfillment, because I want to be touched, I want to be loved, I want to be felt. As a girl, yeah, I get that sentiment. As a man, it's like, bro, what are you talking about? You know? So get that elsewhere, bro. And I get it. Guys have childhood trauma. They try to fill those voids. Figure it out. And that's why it's key for men to have a good social group. Men need to have a very tight circle. And I have that, thank God. You need to have a couple guys around you that you trust with your life. Because I think sometimes that does fill the void that men often fill with a significant other, that being a girlfriend, that derails their life because they're getting into a relationship too young with a girl who doesn't know what they want. By the way, the guy doesn't know what he wants either. You know? And on the contrary, for a girl, it's actually more ideal for you to try to get into that certain type of situation sooner. Right? It works differently for men and women. So for a woman, I think it's ideal for a girl to try to get married sooner. Anywhere from, you know, maybe 20. I'm being realistic. I don't want to say 19, but maybe 20, 21, all the way up until like their late 20s. A girl should be aiming to get into some sort of long-term relationship or marriage in that age range. And the reason why is because when they hit 30, the men who are your age may not look to you anymore. They're going to look to the girls that were once upon a time that age that you were, which is 23, 24, because they're more physically desirable. And not every man will say that that's their criteria, but that is most men's criteria, is how appealing you are physically, how young you are. That youth is probably one of the most important driving factors to a man actually being satisfied sexually, physically with this female for a long period of time or on a long-term time scale. So, you know, I see videos like this and it's like just one of the already million existing reasons as to why men really do need to take their time at a young age to focus on themselves and not get into a relationship with a girl unless it means marriage. And I know a lot of guys in here may have girlfriends and they disagree with that, but you know, I have evidence that can back up my claim for days. Do you? You know, how many relationships end in train wrecks? Every single one, especially with people in their young 20s. But I'll say this, if you're a guy and you're heartbroken in your young 20s because you were in a senseless relationship, that fuel is golden. That's jet fuel, you know, and that's usually what actually makes a lot of guys. So that's the only benefit. That's the only pro that I'll admit to. But, you know, little red pill, I guess, right? Is that red pill? But yeah, any chats before we close out here? See where we at. Is Fresh and Fit live? I think it's just Walter tonight, right? Damn, they still got the loading screen? All right, well, anyways, Josie said, bro dating Randy Orton. Yeah, that chair throw was wild. That chair throw was nuts. Yeah, man, it's simple, bro. For girls, focus on marriage younger. For men, that should really be a focus later. By the way, like, Islamically or religiously, that's not accurate. You know, Islamically, men and women should get married very young. Look, in an ideal society, I agree, but with the cards that we've been dealt here in the United States, if you're not getting married inside of the church and you're not getting married inside of the mosque or the synagogue, whatever, really, really hold off. You know, really hold off. If it's a religious marriage and you guys are both Muslim or you guys are both Christian, and when I say Christian, I mean Christian, then that's different. Then that can be done young at either gender or either age. But for 90% of situations where it's just rather secular, there's no religious undertone to the relationship, yeah, if you're a guy, stick around till you're at least 30, buddy. You know, men peak when they're like 35, 40. You know, some men peak at 40. Takes men a long time to kind of gather their marbles, get their cards right, and present themselves correctly to the world. It takes a long time for men. For women, it's like, it's innate. It's just there. It's within them. They're given that ability. That's the way God ordained it. How is that obtained? By their beauty, by their youth, which is a driving factor for their beauty. So You know, basic math, man. It ain't complicated. Desert Joe says substitute streamer spitting red pill facts. So true. Yo, that's a good. I'm substitute streamer. Somebody said, I look like, bro, I do not look like Myron. We're not doing this again. I do not look like Myron, bro. I don't understand the whole, you guys really don't have eyes. If you think I look like Myron, check your eyes, bro. We literally don't look alike at all. We have different, first, bro, everything. Hair, different. Eyes, different. Lips, nose, it's all different. Although I do have the Semite nose. I'll be honest. I do have like an Arab nose. I got that big ass bumpy lumpy nose. But like even our nose is different. We look way different. Like I can understand if somebody sees Myron and they go, or rather they see me, because this has actually happened. Freaky enough story. Quick story before I close the stream. One time, I swear to God, some kid came up to me in the gym, and he was actually a kid. He was like 17 or 16. And he goes, you know, you look a lot like Myron Gaines. Are you related to him? And immediately I was like, yeah, this nigga's an agent. But then I, came to my senses. I really do. I guess I look like Myron. And he was like, dude, everything, you guys look exactly the same. That's crazy. I saw him one time in person. You guys are both tall. You guys got the same body type. It's like, yeah, duh, we're brothers. But I don't think that we physically look the same at all. I think that I inherited more of the black North African gene, or really just African gene, and then he inherited the full Arab Peninsula gene. Because if you look at my brother, bro, he looks like, and I always say this, people think I'm like lying. People say he looks Somali. No. He looks like Arab. He looks like Saudi. And that's not glaze. Like and this is the thing, if you actually dealt with Arabs your whole life, I've grown up around Arabs. A lot of my friends are Arabs. Myron looks like an Arab. You look at him and you're like, yeah. You would think he's from like Saudi Arabia. If you're familiar with Sudan, which is like a little bit more of a niche people, the Nubian people, Kingdom of Kush, us Sudanese people, we range. Some Sudanese are really dark and like have very African centric features, wide set forehead, wide set cheekbones, larger lips, wider set nose, flat face. And then you have other Sudanese who are damn near white, and people don't know that. But some Sudanese, they have such heavy Arab influence in their DNA because of the Arabization of Islam due to the Arab trade in the 7th century after the Islamic expansion. Some Sudanese look very light. I've even got a cousin who's Sudanese completely, and he's literally white. Like he's way lighter than Myron. So, we range from a multitude of different phenotypes and looks, and it all depends on where you're from in Sudan, because Sudan is very tribal. So, but he got more of the Arab gene, I got more of the African gene. Although I will admit, a lot of people do ask me where I'm from. They're like, yo, are you black? Are you Indian? I don't get Somali a lot, but I suppose I could see how somebody would think I'm Somali. But yeah, Sudanese are a very, very unique group of people. And that's because we're like already East African, and East Africans just have like longer faces, kind of like less pronounced or strong African features, as well as the Arab mix. So we end up being a very unique set of people. Okay. I'm doing a whole DNA rant here. No, we have the same parents. The Agent Hub at $2, he says the link is in the chat. Are you sure? I'm looking for it, bro. Oh, yeah, you can't send links in super chats, huh? I just realized that. Sorry. I can't find it, man. I'm sorry. My weight, I'm 200 flat. Okay. All right, guys. Someone said I'm giving Moroccan. Maybe. I'm just too dark, though. All right. So, guys, that's going to conclude the stream. Hopefully that was good update on the news. Let me know what you think. Comment below once the stream is uploaded. like the video, engage with it, share it with your friends, post it online, clip it up. Yeah, Agent, I think YouTube's blocking it. I apologize, my friend. Clip it up, whatever it is, and I will be back here either tomorrow. So I may go tomorrow with Myron later in the day, but I have an event that I forgot I RSVP'd to. So I kind of have to show face. I just don't know what time I'm going to be back. So, you know when you RSVP something, somebody asks you in 2021, hey, can you make it to my event on March 21st, 2026 at 3 p.m.? You go, yeah, of course. And then it's March 20th, 2026, and you're like, what event are you talking about? It's kind of one of those situations. So I always forget. I'm like not type A at all. I don't plan. I don't have a calendar. I don't have an organizer. I just do life, bro. So, you know, I forgot I had an event I had to show up to. So I may not be online tomorrow, but Myron will be here for sure. And if you don't see me tomorrow, you may see me earlier in the following week, but I'm always guaranteed to be on here Thursday and then Saturday. Again, maybe not tomorrow, but I still was able to go twice a week, just Friday instead of Saturday this week. So like the video, leave a comment. Appreciate all you guys. Hopefully I caught every chat. I make sure I don't miss any. And I will catch you guys on the next stream. All love 07s in the chat only. Be careful. We're on YouTube. And until next time, guys, love you all. Peace out. Have a great rest of your night and jump on a Fresh and Fit because I think they'll go live in a moment.